Video now. Don't worry, I'll be moving the screen and as I go, guys. Don't you worry about it. Hello, everybody. I see you're all coming on. We're going to just let this go for now. It's not, we don't have everybody here yet. The roads are really bad and they're coming. But just hang tough. We're just running a little bit behind. I'll be hosting the event shortly, so hang tough. We got lots of people here and on their way. A few bathroom breaks. We're almost ready to go. So just hang tough.
I sat there. I screamed at you.
Hello, testing. Yep. I'm going to go test the sound system now. CW, watch it. We're going to zoom into everybody. Don't worry. Hello. Is that a little too loud? Let's see what Facebook Land says there. Everything okay? You hear everything well? Awesome. We're just gonna take a little bit of time here, guys. Sorry. Roads are real bad. I knew that this morning. We had our setup. Lots of people are still coming, so we're going to give them a few minutes. Hang tough. It's going to be worth it. Thank you. You guys can talk. It's okay. I know. You're all mine. It's all right. Now I've silenced everybody.
Is that music going to come on again?
Yeah. It's all right. Yeah. Oh yeah, we're doing good. Hello everybody. Yeah, you'll just have to hang tough as we get everybody situated, and I'll get the Zoom feeds in, and I'm going to share this out in multiple groups, so bear with me here. I got to do that too. So I'm going to do that. Oh, hello everybody. I gotta do some sharing here, which I'm surprised isn't coming up here. I want to get this out in groups. Usually I have that. It's strange. Usually I share this out in lots of groups, but it's not coming up, guys. I don't know why. This is strange. Well, everybody watching, please share it out in lots of groups. I don't know why it's not coming up here. That's crazy. Let's see what happens when I go. Let's see here. Oh, can't do that.
It's gone viral everywhere. She said he had an email from Oxford or something. He said an email from a colleague in England that wanted to call it hospital.
Thanks, Richards. I don't know, everybody. Usually I have an option to share in a whole bunch of groups, and it's not up today, which is strange. Well, we'll just have to leave it like that, and I'll share it in groups after. This is the live. Bear with me here, you guys. Just a few more people coming. Can't start without the lawyer, right? Yeah, Clayton, I don't know. Usually I do. Maybe it's because I started it and I didn't do that right away and the option's gone now. But we'll just, we'll hang tough here. It's okay. It's going to be okay. I'll share it after. Who knows, Richards? I don't know. Or Murray, I guess. It's Murray, probably Murray Richards. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Stephen. Osmond, good. Wherever you want. I think we'll be okay. Worst case scenario, after I'm done, the CW coming loud, and then Maryland, I'm going to turn up for sure.
Okay, so I can walk up there.
Yeah. There's Maryland right on. Okay, everybody, Maryland's here too. Yay!
There are only two possibilities. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no question about it.
Yeah, terrific round of guests here, guys. Some really great Albertans. You guys are going to really like this.
Oh, okay. Okay, you want to? I'll pull one of those chairs out. Like you pick a spot and I'm in the chair. You see what place.
That's okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. We can even help you out. We want everybody there. It's all good. You don't have to. I'll even make sure you get over the hump.
Sweetie, where do you want? You want
Yeah,
back here?
I'll help you get up.
I'll pick one. You want this spot? One of these spots here, sweetie? Sure. Okay, I'll move the chair out of the way.
At the back, you grab the.
I'll grab the front. I seen one of these. They did this the other way around. They put those wheels in the front and these coaster goes in the back, and it works. And it works great. Brenda, here's the other here.
Yeah. Yeah. Leave the waters. Where's the bottled water, Dennis?
Right in the cooler.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's not your show today. Relax, take a breath.
Good. Okay, everybody, I'm going to get up and get started here. Got Marilyn there. She's getting situated. Just zoom you guys in here. There's the pulpit. I'm going to zoom you in here, CW. Good. Okay, we're going to call this to attention now and start the presentation. For everyone watching right now, we got about 100 viewers on Facebook Live. We're not even sharing groups, so there's massive momentum here. We got some really great scholars in the United States watching this right now. It's just really, really excellent. And for all you out there watching right now, we got a great cast of Albertans here. You're going to meet a lot of them. Some are just sitting back. I want to take this opportunity right now to thank you, Ray Pritlove, for allowing us this event at this location. Everybody, we're going to keep that pretty quiet. But let's give a big round of applause for it. Thank you so much, Ray.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you. So we're going to get started here, everybody. I know you've been waiting patiently, and you're going to get to meet all these exceptional Albertans from many different walks, but all have something in common. Every one of you, I've got to know you, research you, get to know you in person. These are all builders, historical builders in Alberta, who've stood up for something and have done something in their field. And the ones who choose to speak here today or not, a lot of them will, and it's going to be a great presentation, okay? Something you've never seen before. I'm going to begin with C.W. Alexander. We got up his displays. It's Alberta for All, the Republic of Alberta. This is all about building a nation of Alberta. And C.W. is going to give the Republic of Alberta in his presentation. I'm very pleased to share this with you today. I've been involved with C.W. for a very long time. He ran in the 2019 election with the Alberta Independence Party. He was one of 63 candidates, an original founding member, along with myself. And we're all builders, like I said. CW has quite the presentation. An insurance policy, a bill. It's not a party, not yet. Or maybe we'll be able to work this into a party. We're going to find out. Take it away, CW. It's all on you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave, and thanks, Ray, for having us here today. And for everyone that's online today, thank you for taking the time to be here, most importantly for your children and for future Albertans, because this is a critical time between now and 2023. We have to make a change, and that is going to involve you, everyday Albertans, not the current politicians and elites that are otherwise working for themselves. So it's time that we eliminated the politics of government. One where there's no left or right, no special interests, everyone wins, and no one is left behind. It's time that we created a voice for everyday Albertans. We're tired of having to vote for the lesser of two evils, none of which ultimately represent us. We become their special interests on day one, but the rest of the 1,460 days we spend watching the career politicians satisfying the political alliances that are behind them, and forgetting about the rest of everyday Albertans for the balance of those days. Something has to change. We all in this room here are not here for us. We're here for you. We're here for the 500,000 Albertans that are out of work and without a significant change will stay that way until 2035.
CW, we're going to turn you up because everybody's having a hard time hearing you. It's okay.
Okay.
You just stay for a sec so we interrupt everybody. I'm allowed to speak. Okay, start talking.
Hello, check, 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 check. Is that better?
Sorry.
Okay, we'll just check for everybody else to make sure they can hear me. Do you want to check that, Dave?
Everybody, can you hear CW? Go ahead, CW.
Hello, I'm here.
Perfect.
Check, check, check. Can you hear?
Yeah. Looks
All right,
good.
perfect. We're here for the 500,000 Albertans who have really not much chance of finding employment for a long, long time unless we make a significant change. We're here for our families. We're here for families that are facing large amount of suffering, many that are out of work, many with children who are suffering, many that are facing bankruptcy just weeks away. There's many, many people today. We're here for the union workers that are tired of the politics of unions but understand the safety of being part of one. We're here for seniors who may see a deteriorating CPP if we don't make a change for ourselves. We're here for the young people who are facing 100,000 young Albertans out of work that really have no hope unless we make a change. We're here for small business owners who there's just not enough money out there, and at the end of the day we have a significant number of businesses that have either gone bankrupt or are weeks away from that happening as well. We're here for the private sector and the entrepreneurs to change the environment so that they have a long-term business environment that they want to actually make significant investments into our province. So this is all about everyone else. This is not about us here today, but it's about everyday Albertans having a choice and a chance to make a significant change in the future of Alberta. Now, maybe I'll just say a little bit about myself, first of all. Yes, I was with the Alberta Independence Party. I'm now the Executive Director of Alberta for All. and I'm focused on providing a strong voice for a new Republic of Alberta. Now, me personally, I am a chemical engineer by profession. I've been involved in the oil sands, refining, chemical, environmental, power generation business. I've been a significant player and contributor to building significant projects in Alberta and the growth of this province. And I want to see it go to the next level, which I think is its destiny. So the strong voice is all about a vision of a bold new direction for Alberta, a made in Alberta strategy for Albertans, and a common sense plan to get there. Can everyone see that online, Dave?
Yeah. Can you guys see it on CW speed? It's okay, keep going. They'll let me know.
People ask, what's the Alberta for All mission and goal? It's to form the one clear alternative choice for a 2023 majority for independence and vote in September of 2023. We do not have time to focus on half measures. We have to move to make a difference in 2023 because there are some fundamental factors that will reduce the choices that we have to make in the future if we wait. Today, based on the Alberta budget and the Alberta forecasts, for example, we will have a significant number of people continue to come into this province. Immigrants that we like to see come into the province in the proper ways and legally, but we have to recognize that a lot of the people that do come in don't understand the history of Alberta. They don't understand the fact that we are really a colony of it. So every single year that we do nothing, 2%, the number of people who actually understand the history of Alberta and can be educated to understand why we need to make a change will not really understand that. And so we face a choice where the timing is such that if we don't act soon enough, we will never be in a position to be anything but a colony of Canada. So it's very important. And the second thing is, on the track with where we are with Ottawa, the bankruptcy, the deficits that we face, we may not have a choice in a few years if we don't make a significant change. Bankruptcy and our inability to move from the debt that we are incurring is a significant issue that could be a barrier to us making a choice. The second point is to unify all Albertans under one Alberta for All banner with a winning strategy for a united alternative. When we look at the big picture, our focus is on creating a voice for a majority of Albertans. That's ultimately the unification that we need to have. But we need to bring all parties and all individuals together so that we have that unified choice versus the federalist parties that are not going to be able to solve the fundamental problems that we face in this province. Thirdly, we need to deliver a team of highly capable business and community leaders as non-partisan MLA representatives in the 87 societies with a greater authority to act. Today, we have MLAs that are essentially complaint takers and backbenchers who succumb to the central authority of the political parties that come into power. The voice of the everyday Albertan at each constituency level is not adequately represented, and we see silent, sycophant MLAs who choose not to say anything versus speak up for the constituents. In a new Republic of Alberta, every one of the 87 MLAs will have the ability to speak on behalf of their constituents. And not only that, they'll have the opportunity, the MLAs will have a budget in which they can spend that gives them authority to act at a local level and become more of a general manager versus a complaint taker or backbencher. This has a great opportunity attached to it for government to act quicker, more efficiently, and reduce significant red tape that otherwise will never change with a massive, bloated bureaucracy that we have today. Lastly, Albertans will expect that the unified alternative will have the ability to transition to a new republic. It's not good enough for us to merely be representatives in a normal type election cycle. Albertans will expect that we have significant people, business people, community leaders that have the ability to act not only at a normal in a normal way to govern, but in a way that we have the knowledge to be able to move from a province to a new republic. So we want to be able to bring an executive team of prominent business leaders to drive, lead, and assist the 2023 government and the 87 MLAs to ensure that we're successful. To be clear, Jason Kenney talks a lot about $20 billion a year. Well, the simple truth is it's $41 billion net every single year that goes to Ottawa that never returns. 20 billion of it is equalization. The other 21 billion is for services that were taxed ultimately, but the services that can be done in Alberta at a fraction of the cost. What that means ultimately is that money is going there, and that GDP that's developed out of it is actually spent in Quebec, not in Alberta. So a change right away gives us the opportunity to start spending that money here and being much more efficient. Alberta is getting screwed. There's many, many ways I could talk about this, and I've met many Albertans across the province that could give specific examples of how this is occurring. But if you look at the big picture, if you look at the red arrow, you can see that's $41 net billion every year going to Ottawa that never comes back. But we forget that Alberta's been traded off for decades with the energy market, and that there's billions of dollars in discounted oil and gas at spot prices in many cases. That's essentially a GDP bleed and a profit bleed from Alberta. That's a significant number, and we can't forget that, because at the end of the day, when a NAFTA agreement or a USMCA is being negotiated, you can bet that the East, Ontario, and Quebec are ensuring that their auto industry and their dairy cartels are kept in place, and the Americans are happy with that because they're getting $20 to $40 billion in free money every year because they've traded that away for their interests. In a new republic, that will change because we'd be focused on that. So we have GDP spending in the rest of Canada on military, borders, and services. There'll be people talking about that here today. We have supply management GDP loss. Just a quick example, the egg industry. We supply about 10.3% of the, actually it's about 10.3% quota that we have. We have 11.4% of the population. We would actually, today we actually supply about 71 million dozen eggs. We could actually sell about 81 million dozen, that's 10 million dozen eggs. We immediately would increase the number of farms that we have in Alberta. That's direct GDP leakage that you just don't see, and that applies in other related supply management scenarios as well. So significant numbers that we're talking about. And let's not forget the carbon tax. There's really three carbon taxes right now. We've got the $30 Kenny Industrial Emitters carbon tax. It's not a compliance fee, like he talks about. And then we have the $20 Trudeau carbon tax. And then we have the Clean Fuel Standard carbon tax that's coming out. It could be anywhere between $200 to $350 per ton. Significant destruction of the Alberta economy will occur as a result. And by the way, of course, let's not forget the globalist leakage that's happening with all the funds that are going out to other countries with Justin Trudeau. Current events, we have destructive federal policies. We have landlocked resources by policy today. Jason Kenney, if you're listening, we are landlocked already. We're better off on our own. Major flight of capital, it continues. We have Alberta debt that's headed to $150 to $200 billion with $3 to $5 billion a year in debt interest servicing. That's a lot of money. And as it sits, we got about 500,000 people out of work, not what they tell you in the statistics, because that never includes the contractor, self-employed people that are all sitting at home, many of which have been at home for years now. We have out-of-control immigration policies that will continue, which will dilute us further in the context of our representation. And Alberta continues to send that $41 billion, and we now have a $24 billion deficit that needs to be dealt with. There are really three problems that Alberta faces that are epic, entrenched, and unfixable. The first one is that we are a colony. We are structurally underrepresented at the parliamentary and Senate level significantly, and that will not change. Constitutional monarchy that exists today with the Queen, parliamentary democracy system, is broken, and I'll talk about that. And our interests, cultural differences, our economic interests are different than the rest of Canada. Here's some examples. So we have the Atlantic Canada with 2.4 million people, 32 seats in Parliament. 4.36 million people in Alberta, 34 seats. There's something wrong. The population of Quebec at 8.34 million, 78 seats, and Alberta and BC together representing more people have less seats. Something needs to change. This is a little bit messy, but the point is that at the end of the day, we have significant problems that we face with the existing structure. Special interests lie behind the Prime Minister, like Gerald Butts, for example, ideologically driven in the environment. We now have foreign interests that have the right to interfere in our elections. In 2018, the Canada Elections Act was changed to allow foreign interests to interfere. The provincial parties, as you can see, are really what I like to call nobles of Ottawa, because they really are, because they're connected to political parties, whether it's the NDP or the UCP. You'll see them act in ways that potentially compromise Alberta, because they won't act fast enough, because they're more concerned about whether or not their CPC counterparts or NDP counterparts will benefit by a delay. That's not in the interest of Alberta. There's also special interests associated with that as well, but the other thing to point out is that a lot of the elected MLAs that exist are ultimately whipped into position with a cabinet and a premier that doesn't allow them to speak out on behalf of you. The political parties are now so entrenched with special interests, with bloated bureaucracies, they fail to want to act quick enough to make the right decisions that every individual family or business owner would have made years ago, because they're too worried about their political interests rather than what's in the interest of their constituents. And of course, we have an appointed Senate that is really partisan at this point, and they're in power there until they're 75, making for an extremely slow process to get anything done. Final point is that you need 7 to 10 provinces with 50% of the population or more, 7 of which receive equalization today. So how much do you think they're going to be motivated to make any change when it comes to equalization, Senate reform, or otherwise? We've already seen from history that Preston Manning tried to do it with the West Wants In. Stephen Harper got into power as a Prime Minister and had the chance to change Senate reform, which could have benefited us significantly with C-48, C-69, and the TMX purchase. As a result, he got to Ottawa. He realized when you're standing in front of 78 MPs in Quebec, a whole bunch of them in Ontario, there wasn't a chance that's going to change. So it really will never change. That's the key point. We have to move forward in what's the interest of our children. There's a lot of detail here. This is available on the website. But the only point I want to make on this is the resource extraction economies generate significant GDP. $304 of GDP for every hour worked is a significant number. Significant wealth is generated in extraction industries, and we're sitting on the 3rd largest reserve on planet Earth, and we just have to make some change strategically in how we do things, because we have to acknowledge that the environment, going green, these things are going to exist. We can't deny them. It's going to happen. Our children want it. But there's a long time now that we can invest and make significant wealth from the resource wealth that we have. If you take the rest of Canada, or if you take green energy and solar farms as an example with manufacturing, that only generates about $68 of GDP per hour worked. That's about 20% of what a resource extraction economy can create. Do you see how we can get a significant resource benefit by turning this thing around 180 degrees? Albertans are better off in a new Republic of Alberta. When we talk to Albertans, there's many issues that exist and many things that we need to educate Albertans on to make a decision for a new republic. But three of the key things that we talk about and we hear all the time are about being landlocked, what's going to happen to our pensions, and what about social services. Now, if you look at this particular slide, we'll focus on the first one. We're already landlocked. When we have borders, that will unlock access because now we have something to negotiate with. Today we're underrepresented. We have no ability to have anyone speak for us, or it's just going out into a vacuum. With a border, we now have the ability to negotiate skies, for example. BC, China, United States, the rest of Canada, they all fly across our borders, but not in a new Republic of Alberta without tidewater access and all of the things that are important for us. We'll have a national spend, for example, right away in terms of things like the military. $7 billion a year will be spent to have our own military. Well, that's negotiating leverage because when the Americans or the Swedes are looking to get a piece of that action, there's no reason they can't pick up the phone and call Ottawa and say, look, we've got this contract over here, we really think it's a good idea for you to give them some access to be, across the BC border in order for them to be able to negotiate the trade that they have. Otherwise, we might make a decision to move the auto industry south or tax you on it or something. So there's lots of negotiating leverage that we have. Not to mention that we do have the international security agreements related to landlocked countries, and that in itself provides significant leverage as well. Now, in terms of pensions, today we sent $7.3 billion to Ottawa. About $4.5 billion comes back right now. And so that leaves $2.8 billion every year that will sit in our bank account, not in Ottawa's bank account. So today with the CPP, actually I just issued a number of things on social media, and you'll see it, but a couple of points. In the last year, we've spent in debt the equivalent of the entire Canada Pension Plan in 1 year. Not only that, that $400 billion is now being risked in China, being invested in pipelines, coal mines, all of the very things that we're being prevented from actually doing in our own country. The bad part about it is it's not even transparent and it's not safe. So Ottawa's been putting your dollars from your Canada Pension Plan at risk as a result. So for Albertans in the long term for pensions, we're far better off with that money in our own third-party administered plan, and with the ability to invest it in what's important for us, not for Ottawa. And lastly on that point is that if seniors look at their checks, there's a thing that says federal benefit payment, which is a potential step towards them removing the third-party administered plan and putting it into general revenue. So guess what happens when you put the money into general revenue? Anybody? It disappears. It's time for a change. We need to protect our seniors, and we need to protect our young people who will ultimately be seniors as well for the long term. Social services. Today we have a $24 billion deficit. So do we think that we're going to have better services or less services in future? We have talk of privatization as well. The debt's rising. It's not getting any better. So that's a very difficult environment in which to expect you're going to have the same services as you've had before. But in the new Republic of Alberta, we'll be retaining that $41 billion. We'll be able to have universal health care. We'll be able to make choices with respect to how we can operate more efficiently than we do today. We won't be burdened by a Canada Health Act. We can actually invent what's right for Albertans. So we'll have innovative preventative approaches that'll work, and we can also make sure that our disabled, our homeless, and our veterans are taken care of, and that no one is left behind. So the question is, what do we do? Which option are we better, or would we rather be aligned with? Now there's a lot of debate, and I'm sure in this room we'll have some debate after around these particular choices, but we could sit and do nothing. Well, we're faced with billions in deficit. We're being crushed. We have Albertans that are faced with bankruptcy and have no choices. I don't think that's the right answer. Or we can negotiate, as Kenny would say, a fair deal. But if we compare all these things up with the fundamental structural problems that we face, being underrepresented, having a constitutional monarchy that doesn't exist, doesn't work, and a low, and with the cultural differences that we have, we will struggle and struggle and struggle. We will never get to what's our true destiny or what the potential that we have to become something far greater than where we are. Constitutional reform, maybe we can solve the structural problems, give us more representation, maybe a little bit more Senate representation. But let's face it, the East has designed this since 1905 to be for their benefit, not for ours. So do we expect that they're going to all of a sudden tomorrow stand up and give us all the same things that they get, and then some? I mean, if we were a separate country today, would we put $41 billion a year and give it to Ottawa to be a part of Canada for what we've got right now? We need to make a change. This is not going to happen. Now, we could form a new country with a political party system, but I can tell you that lots of people that I go around and I talk to in Alberta, they have a lot of the same issues. Whether it's center, whether it's left, whether it's right, we're tired of voting for the lesser two evils. So what if we could do something different that actually gives Albertans a government that actually works for them? So forming a new nation with a representative government for the people. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, the only way colonies rise up and form a new nation is when we, the people, make a decision to do it. Albertans can fix what's been rigged since 1905 against us. I talk about this quickly because there's a lot of discussion on how are we going to do this, how are we going to do that. There's talk about the Clarity Act and how we need to follow the Clarity Act. And at the end of the day, what it all boils down to is it's a political will of Albertans to make a choice, vote for it, and then we'll sort out the details later. Because we've been crushed and held down since 1905. We're not going to let an Ottawa Parliament tell us whether or not we have the right question or whether we have the right number of people. And we'll make the decision to do that because that's who we are. We make those kind of choices. We're proud, we're determined Albertans, and we're going to make it happen if we make the choice to do it. And I like to say there's 7 steps to a new Republic of Alberta. The first one is to build and unite, educate Albertans on the benefits of a new republic. And we're in progress with that right now, sitting in this meeting today. Full Alberta autonomy. That's something that we could be doing right now. If Jason Kenney make a decision to do it, we don't need a referendum to decide on whether we need our own Alberta pension plan, our own provincial police, our own ability to collect taxes, our own immigration reform. All of these items are things that we can take action on right now, but Jason Kenney is delaying that for his own federalist purposes at our detriment. A referendum on equalization. Well, that in itself I think is a complete waste of time. But having said that, there are benefits for Albertans to go through a referendum. Number one, it will likely be successful, which is a good thing. We'll get a chance to all see a referendum go into place. Second thing is that what we will see is that there will be federalist politicians who will delay, and ultimately Albertans will see that Alberta or Ottawa is working in their interests, not ours, and we will be there with an alternative that will give Albertans a choice for 2023. Now, the One Alberta Agreement, this is very important. One of the big things that has to be addressed is a path and a process for all Indigenous people to come together with the rest of Albertans to become ultimately one Alberta. This is a chance of a lifetime for everyone to be equal with equal opportunity and to be able to create a process that will work for everybody. So where today we have 65,000 people in Saddle Lake who have no voice in Alberta and are focused on a Federal Indian Act, when you have 6,000 people sitting in St. Paul who have representation at the government level, surely we can do something different than what's there today. So number one, we will have more resources and ability to actually have everyone benefit because everyone wins in a new Republic of Alberta. So that's the first thing. So surely we can create a situation that will be better off for Indigenous people as well as ourselves. And secondly, self-government is important for Indigenous people, no different than it is for everyone else. So surely we can create a government that includes everyone ultimately, but with MLAs who have the responsibility and have budgets to be able to act and take decisions on their own. Essentially we can create a form of self-government for everyone at every constituency level, so everybody wins and everybody's equal. We may have to have transition programs based on what the need is, but that's the path and the process that needs to be gone through so that ultimately everyone comes together. Now, forming government is the fifth step with a referendum on independence, which I'm saying is with government in 2023, a vote in 2023, 120 days roughly after that is September 1st, 2023. Sounds like a good time with Alberta Day to have an Independence Day vote. 2-year transition period, to be able to turn over, deal with all the various agreements that we need to do, but not 4 years, because I'm sure a federal government would want to use a normal election cycle to try to kibosh our ability to become our own new republic. And then lastly, international recognition as an independent nation requires three things. First one is you have a permanent border that's recognized. Number two, you have a permanent population that exists. And number three, you have the ability to operate on your own. After that, you merely need the international community to recognize you as an independent country. It's time for a bold new direction for Alberta. Now, if you think about Alberta right now, what would you say the Alberta strategy is?
CW, I just got a text and said, is this event available online? Can you just give them, like, where do they go to see this?
This event is available online at facebook.com/CW Alexander for Alberta Independence. With the number 4.
Tell me that again, facebook.com.
Facebook.com/CW Alexander, number 4, Alberta Independence.
Got it.
Okay, so I'll ask the question again. If you think about Alberta right now, what would you say Alberta's strategy is? Anyone?
To appease Ottawa.
What's that?
To appease Ottawa, the
Appease Ottawa.
Laurentia.
Anyone else?
Bring Alberta to its knees.
Bring Alberta to its knees.
Continue extracting wealth from Alberta and not having to be accountable in any way, shape, or form.
Continue to extract wealth from Ottawa without any accountability.
What do the viewers think?
They're doing nothing.
Status quo, wait and see.
Status quo. So if you're back in the days of Ralph Klein, what would you have said his, in a couple of words, what the strategy for Alberta would be?
Create an Alberta advantage.
To create the Alberta advantage. I don't see any advantage right now. Well, we need to become the number one GDP per capita nation on earth, and we can do it at the same level as Norway. which runs at about $125,000 of GDP per capita. Or more simply, the wealthiest democracy per capita on earth. Now the Republic Advantage is Alberta's future. I took the 2019 Alberta budget forecast, used their numbers, made some other assumptions, and we keep building the model out better and better each time. But essentially, where we sit right now is we have a baseline in 2019 of about $350 billion GDP. With the current COVID, which I factored in here, we're probably sitting around $280 billion today. It could actually be less. But the bottom line is that on the current track and path, if you assumed that the CPC government was to get in place in Ottawa and be friendly to Alberta, we might get back to the 2019 GDP by 2035. So where does that leave the 500,000 people that are out of work?
Well said, guys.
That's unacceptable. And even with an economic recovery plan, it's spending $10 billion probably every year to try to keep people employed. And half of those jobs are actually getting filled by seasonal workers who don't even live in Alberta and don't even pay taxes in Alberta. Something needs to change. Now, if Canada keeps going on its present course with Trudeau, the NDP, the Liberals, all working in conjunction with each other, we are in a lot of trouble. But either way, we don't and are not creating an Alberta that's better than the one we came to when we first came here to the planet. We need to create a better thing for our future and our future of our children. The Republic of Alberta can make a significant change. It doesn't mean we sacrifice the environment. Just to give some numbers, the status quo is the 80,000 that we have or had, down to probably 65,000. We might get back, but even in a COVID world, we're still below. And let's not forget that with immigration, our population is growing every single year. So we may be sitting with 4.4 billion people here today, but we could be up as high as 5.8 million people, which ultimately is reducing the standard of living. Pardon? Million. 5.8 million people in Alberta. With the Republic of Alberta, we've run some numbers and we can get up significantly higher than where we are today. But that's going to require a significant reversal in where we are. And let's hope that the capital that's fled this province will move back significantly the day we decide that we need to act differently. All right, so what's our path there? Right away in 2023, 2024, the $41 billion no longer goes to Ottawa. We take some of that money. We now have national expenditures that are getting spent right here in Alberta. $7 to $11 billion is going to get spent. We now take and we say it's time that all Albertans benefited from lower taxes. So at everything up to the $50,000 level. So for those of you that are watching, that are making $15, $20, $25 an hour, paying no tax. That's a significant benefit. I mean, what do Albertans do when they have more money in their pocket?
Can I just hold you for a sec here, CW?
They spend it.
One sec, because there's a lot of comments flowing in on social media. We got a lot of people watching us. Just want to say a few things, everybody. The legal issues, we got a legal expert, and CW will answer questions. But for some of you that are talking about autonomy and taxation, what CW and this whole presentation is, the independent nation of Alberta, the Republic, is CW's, where you absolutely keep that money. You don't get to keep that money in any autonomy or inside Canada. Section 91 doesn't allow you that. For those on CW's feed, I have Richard Albert on my feed. He's an expert here, guys, and he'll tell you all about it. But sorry, it's just because there's so much going on here, guys. I had to interrupt that.
Okay, no problem.
Go ahead.
All right, so no taxes being paid up to $50,000. That ultimately turns into a significant GDP boost, which helps every single small business in this province. We create tens of thousands of businesses and likely hundreds of thousands of jobs right away with a GDP boost associated with tax relief reform. Then from there, once we have the lowest taxes, diversification will occur as a result of having a much better tax environment, eliminating the regulatory crushing policies that exist in Ottawa. Capital will return back to Alberta virtually overnight. I was talking to a commercial furniture entrepreneur who has closed shop, finished up, talked to me, he's from Calgary, very well-to-do individual, and he said there were about 15,000 commercial furniture jobs that existed in Calgary alone, not including the indirect jobs associated with that, like by providing glass and all the various pieces that come with it. And I said to him, so when we make the choice to become a new Republic of Alberta, do you think those jobs will return? He said, absolutely they will. There's these regulatory policies, the high tax regime, the changes that have been made, particularly a lot of these other TPP policies and otherwise, have driven all the jobs to America, China, or Quebec. That's a big number. Just that little commercial furniture manufacturing alone is significant. And the city of Calgary is not helping out any either with the way they go, and they're looking at all the different regulatory things that they in themselves are limiting our businesses. So when we're talking about things from a national or provincial level, we have to look at things on a municipal level as well to see what's going on. So we actually have businesses that want to locate here. Not only that, that particular entrepreneur, sharp guy, developed some technology for the military, and he presented that to the Canadian military. Well, they hands down said, that particular product wins, we need to buy that. So he had this $5 or $10 million contract. About 6 months went by, and in that time frame, he started to think, well, where's my purchase contract? Because I am the only guy that can provide this. Well, about month 7, he started to get concerned. Well, by month 8, he decided to take a flight down to Ottawa and talk to the lieutenant general or whoever it was that was responsible for that purchase at the time. And he sat down and he says, well, what's going on? You gave me the business. And he says, well, I got to be honest with you. Your manufacturing is in the wrong province. He lost that contract to somebody in Quebec, even though he was given that contract, and he had the best technology. This is one example of many where Albertans are treated unfairly at all levels. In our own Republic of Alberta, we won't have that problem. All right, so I'm not going to go into detail here, but the choice is we can increase our GDP between now and 2035, 2040 by $530 billion, putting us up to one of the highest GDP per capita nations on earth. Or we can have a status quo increase, still leaving 500,000 people out of work, with probably a lot more debt at the same time. So we have to make the choice. What is in the best interest of ourselves and in the interest of our children for the long term? By the way, in here, we make a point of talking about the municipal funding plan. So this plays to the budgets that the 87 MLAs, independent, nonpartisan MLAs would have, which would give them the ability to actually generate local content GDP right from the get-go. $3 billion plan, 87 ridings, $36 million a year to get things done efficiently. Now we put the Republic Advantage into 5 pillars, and these are in no particular order. First of all, there's the people. So we need all to come together so we have equal opportunity for all. Indigenous, non-Indigenous, young people, seniors, trades, unions, public sector, private sector. We have tremendous capability in this province. We have the economic pillar, which is significant. The lowest taxes in North America. We could be in a place where we'll, of course, be spending significant amounts of money right away because the $41 billion won't be going out. So that's $700 per month in every working, productive Albertan's pocket, assuming everyone makes $50,000. Consumer prices will be low because there'll be no sales taxes, there'll be no carbon taxes. We'll have world-class social services. improved pensions, and we'll have world-class institutions such as academia. You know, when I think about Kenny and doing the corporate income tax reductions, he made a good move when it came to small business, because that really helps small business. But for big business, for anyone that's been in a big corporate environment, we know at the end of the day you have to actually satisfy shareholders and shareholder dividends. So it doesn't make any sense really to provide a tax reduction in the midst of trying to maintain dividends, because essentially the money is moving out of the province. So unless that corporate tax cut is resulting in increased capital investment in the province, essentially just move the money out and haven't actually created any jobs. So it would have been much better off with an Alberta technology tax credit that amounted to the same amount of money in order to get our technology research, so our academia, our private research going, any technology that could have been developed in the last 4 years, we could have put those things in place. That would have created jobs, kept the money in the province, and actually set us up to be able to be more efficient over time. I can tell you, I have friends who are great engineers, great technology development people, who lost their jobs in the last little while, when a technology tax credit could have created a scenario where, for example, they could have done a partial upgrading technology project, commercialized it, and within a couple, 3 years, could have gone full scale, that could have eliminated diluent in this province, that would have freed up 400 to 800,000 barrels a day of pipeline capacity that we so desperately need. We could do these kind of things in an independent Republic of Alberta. Financial institutions. We have the Alberta Treasury Branch. That's the Alberta Bank, or Bank of Alberta. It was set up in the 1930s. That becomes our Bank of Alberta. We can have our own currency. We control our own country. He who owns and controls the currency ultimately controls the country. We can utilize public banking at a community banking level. So community banks, they're popping up all over the United States. And so rather than this money just going back straight to shareholders and private interests, a lot of the money just goes back to communities, so the communities can invest the returns for the benefit of the community. Private bankers can loan money that's created from nothing based on the good faith and credit of Albertans, then why can't Albertans ultimately create that credit so that ultimately the benefits of it flow back to ourselves? We have an Alberta Stock Exchange. We can change things there as well. So rather than being an enforcer of capital markets that drives Alberta capital out, or is there just to enforce, we can actually create junior capital pools again, utilize the Alberta Stock Exchange as a means in which to help small businesses. So invest in the documentation, the paperwork for small businesses that are just starting up, that otherwise don't have the funding to do that. So we create big barriers for small businesses by creating such regulatory costs on the front end that you can't actually get these companies up and running, or you're doing it with skimpy amounts of capital, which ultimately can result in documentation issues. So let's get the Alberta Stock Exchange and the Securities Commission working for us and creating junior capital pools and the entrepreneurs getting to work in this province. Number 4, extremely important, the Alberta Constitution. We need an Alberta Constitution immediately on forming a Republic of Alberta. We need to put that together, and that needs to be done by all Albertans, not just a few. And especially not a current government, that it's not in their interest to put a constitution together that's in the interest of everyday Albertans. We need to be able to limit government and have that held as something that's honored first from the judicial level and from the standpoint of all the representatives, executive team, right through to the ultimate president of Alberta. Because if there's no constitution, there's no limit on what any one of those entities can do. We've already seen with a parliamentary democracy that Justin Trudeau can operate in any way he wants as a dictator, and nobody does anything. With a constitution, you have limits, and you can be removed. These are the things that we need to think about and we need to put it in place as soon as possible. We'll have reduced red tape with a representative government with these MLAs that I talked about. That will have more accountability at the riding and society level. So enough of long-term MLAs that are on for years and years and years, and for that matter, municipal councillors. Limit it to 2-term limits to eliminate any cronyism of any kind, and that they can be recalled and fired at any time with the rules put in place that we Albertans will put into place to do that. And lastly, Albertans' first policies. So how many people are tired of China, America, and the Saudis owning Alberta assets and Albertans not being able to work?
Yeah.
It's time that we made a change. When the Chinese started growing their economy, what did they do? They said, well, nobody puts money into China unless we get 51% ownership. So maybe we need to do a similar kind of thing. So Albertans, any Alberta business, for example, 51% owned, led and operated by Albertans would receive significant tax advantages over anyone else. So accelerated capital cost depreciation numbers. But basically, let's get Albertans start to own assets, and ultimately, where Albertans have a choice to grow our province and our country on our own. We need to have proper immigration policies. So immigration based on economic need, where we create productive people coming into this new republic. We need to be able to do that, because if you want a productive economy, you need to have people that will come into place and contribute. Then labor policies, we need to ensure that Albertans are first, get the ability to be employed first, number one, until we get down to, say, for example, 3.75% unemployment rate. It doesn't matter which industry, so if it starts to get below that, you bring people in who are productive, who can actually provide that type of labor and services. But you know, I think about stories that I hear, for example. So there's a crane operator in Fort McMurray today. He's sitting at home. He knows there's crane operator work that can be done up in Fort McMurray. But what happens? They call in for a crane operator out of the union shop, and that same union shop is controlled by Maritimers from Newfoundland. So what do? They pick up the phone, they phone their Newfoundland buddy, and ultimately that guy flies in, gets the job, and the crane operator is sitting at home in Fort McMurray. And at the end of the day, where is the crane operator from Newfoundland paying his taxes? They're not in Alberta, they're in Newfoundland. So we need to change things. We need to ensure that our Albertans are getting the jobs first. All right, so a resource economic advantage, a made in Alberta strategy. So it's more than about pipelines and catering to the east. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of tired of career politicians who talk about pipelines when this all should have been done 20 years ago. So, you know, I've lived in this country all my life, and I gotta tell you, as a private citizen, I've seen so many scenarios where this could have happened 20, 30 years ago, and we could have got things done, but it's always been a mediocre country. It's never stepped ahead to be number one, and we need to actually start doing things differently. So right now today, there is no strategy around resources, but particularly around the oil and gas sector, but we need to make it a positive thing. So today, we have a diversified economy. If you actually look at the numbers from 1985 through to 2019, I mean, the oil and gas sector only represents about 16% of the total economy in Alberta. That might actually be less today, you know, based on the current numbers. But we have a diversified economy today. So anyone that tells you that we need a diversified economy is just telling you gobbledygook, because we already have it. And what we need is we need to grow. We need to do things that are in our interest, not get crushed by what the East thinks is in their own ideological interest. So today, when you're dealing with economy and business, you know, there's times where you focus on being a growth business. So if you're back in 1947 or 1975, you're drilling for, you know, million barrel reserves. That's a certain strategy. Now we're in an economy where we know there's 100 million barrels a day of demand. Maybe it's growing 1% a year. It's still growing because the number of people in the world is still growing, last I looked. So it's not going away. Green energy may be supplementing it over time, but we still have a base that we're dealing with. And somebody's got to capture that market. And we can be the people to do it. But we need to do things differently. So when you're in a market that's relatively mature, you adjust to being a relatively mature economy. So in this case, we say, well, we're not going to necessarily grow leaps and bounds to millions of barrels a day. We're making 4 million barrels a day. We maybe make 5. Maybe we make 6. Maybe we stay at 4. But we can make more money on that 4 or 5 billion barrels that we're producing. So essentially, we can focus on being in this for the long game. When you're in it for the long game, lots of people make money in the long game. So by doing that, what we need to do is we need to look at ensuring how can we secure the bitumen markets, capitalize on that $20 to $40 billion that's seeping out every single day, and get ourselves into a far better spot. So first of all, with the military budget of $7 billion, we're going to spend probably $2 billion right away putting in cavern storage, or at least, the private sector is going to do this. But at the end of the day, we have the ability to put in a strategic petroleum reserve that stops us from actually just giving away our oil at spot pricing. Just makes sense. Maybe we can cover $5 to $10 a barrel. And then we're going to get our pipelines, but we also can look through negotiating trade agreements with the United States and with first tax advantage policies to attract investment with Alberta-based businesses. We can look to secure downstream assets that will ensure that there's a home for our bitumen or our synthetic crude oil. And then once we've done that, we can back integrate and create the cleanest, greenest, refined products on planet Earth, because we're sitting right next to the ally that actually uses that same product. Give us an advantage, a much more strategic advantage than where we are right now, with a low quality product, we're giving it away at a discount. Instead, we can start to do things differently. So we will put the policies in place to attract capital, to achieve these kind of objectives, and ensure that we go to the Americans and say, look, we're kind of tired of the $20 to $40 billion that we're losing. Surely there's something that we can do here. But we're probably going to be putting our pipelines in to the West Coast anyways, because we've got China and Japan and a lot of other people that would like our product. But we can do these kind of transactions now because we're only working in our interest. Ottawa's not giving away our interest for their own benefit. So a lot more money stays in your pocket. Talked about not paying any tax up to $50,000, but we can run with a marginal tax rate of 20%. Everybody wins. We create an economy, a free enterprise, where opportunity is available to everyone, and we can grow a significant, diversified economy that will be abundant because of the resource strategy as well that we have coming into place. There will be no shortage of resources to be able to do this. And by the way, everything in the calculation here was originally starting at the $100 billion of revenue on an Alberta basis. There'll be at least another $55 to $65 billion in revenue from the government as a result of the increases that we start making, even on a smaller amount basis, once the resource industry kicks back into gear. By the way, anyone that lives in Nisku, Leduc, Grand Prairie, Medicine Hat, Calgary will win big time in this, what we're doing here in a resource strategy, because there'll be a significant number of upgraders and otherwise that are going to be required to get to a refined product capability. So what is a representative government and how do we transition to it? Now this is a very simple couple of slides that I'm going to show. It's much more detailed than this, and it needs to go to a much further level, but it just gives a flavor of where we are today, where we lead to in the interim, and then the next step to go to the next place. So today, queen and we have a lieutenant governor in Alberta that ultimately has a premier, and a bunch of career politicians like Jason Kenney, Rachel Lontley, the governing MLAs that are backbenchers ultimately, and the people at the bottom. Now, in this particular slide, I just want to point out that today, how does it work with ministers? Well, there's 20 or 24 ministers today. They all came out of the 63 MLA candidates that got elected from the UCP. And Jason Kenney looks around the room and says, well, who's the best guy to be the Minister of Health? Well, that person may not have had anything to do with the health department before they got into power and they became a minister. So the problem we got is we got career politicians, many of which who are, I'll just say lawyers, not that I have anything wrong, anything bad to say about lawyers. I could, but I won't. But for many of these career politicians are folks that have been political science students, gone and become executive assistants to an MLA or an MP. Next thing you know, they're in Ottawa. Next thing you know, they come back and they're now Premier of Alberta. So, these MLAs, for the most part, don't necessarily have business experience that actually gives them the ability to actually do things efficiently, nor be in a ministry that they actually have any experience with. That needs to change. We have a bloated governments, bloated bureaucracies right now, that the change is just not occurring because deputy ministers have all been around there for a long time. They're 8 or 10 steps ahead of the new MLA coming in, and you can bet they're protecting their bureaucracy just as much, if not more, than that particular minister's ability to actually manage and lead and make change. So in a representative government, the first and foremost important part is that we have a constitution. The people develop it. People are at the top of the pyramid here, so to speak. The Alberta Constitution is in place. We now know what the governing principles are for our country. Foundational principles. We don't operate by polls or by what's leading questions. We operate by foundational principles. We need to get back to the basics of government. So these 87 nonpartisan MLAs will have the accountability and budget and authority to act, and there could be a leader select that would come out of those 87. We'd have these prominent business leaders who would act as essentially the executive branch, who would be part of the republic model of the alternative government that we would be putting forward, and they would be responsible to manage those ministries. There are people in the room right here today who are more than capable to be part of that executive team that could lead this country to a new republic. We have somebody very capable in constitutional affairs, someone who's managed and led significant corporations in Alberta, and a military veteran. We have someone with decades of experience in health that is a significant contribution and could be part of the ultimate team that can lead us to the transition to a new republic. The next step is the leader select, who's selected out of the 87, steps aside or runs, their choice. But ultimately, with the Alberta Constitution, we actually, I'll call it Bill 1, Bill 2, we create an Alberta Constitution. We create a president-elect that the people will have to actually elect that person, and we'll have an election of that for president of Alberta. And that president will appoint business executives, much like the transitionary prominent leaders that we were talking about, who will ultimately be approved by the 87 nonpartisan MLAs that will be elected before that. So the Common Sense Plan summary, we have a Made in Alberta strategy for Albertans to attract investment capital as a resource advantage, as a consolidator. Alberta First policies that ensures that Albertans are first in labor, immigration, and a majority-owned tax advantages that go with it. Lowest taxes in North America, no carbon taxes, no sales taxes. We get out of the business of trying to run business, and we have no picking of winners and losers. Diversification and growth through the lowest taxes. We have spin-off industry as a new nation, and efficient, no red tape government. Alberta keeps the $41 billion net, which is a great startup capital for a new country. Everybody wins in a new Republic of Alberta. One of the key elements is that we have a broad spectrum strategy and policies that a majority of Albertans will agree to. Because everyone has to win and nobody's left behind. Significantly, really, really important. Both sides of the political spectrum. If we think about it right now, 1 in every 4 people, if you think about your neighbors, and you look around your neighbors, 1 of every 4 or 5 people is out of work right now. We need to start thinking about our neighbors rather than political alliances that are left or right. People have fallen behind those political alliances and special interests because they've lost the trust in government. So they try to find somebody who's going to be their savior, but at the end of the day, there's no saving anybody with a $24 billion deficit and a crushed economy that's not going to change until we make a 180-degree turn and do what's in our interests, not in what's Ottawa's. We need an Alberta Constitution. We need to focus on what's important, which is September or the next election in 2023. We need to form an alternative majority government that stands alone because the rest of the Federalist parties will not be able to deliver what's needed in the long term for our children and future generations. And we'll have a representative government by Albertans for Albertans. A bold new direction for Alberta, common sense plan that works, one Alberta where we're all equal and have equal opportunity, Albertans first policies that put us first, a lot more money stays in your pocket, the Republic advantage is Alberta's future. No left or right, no special interests, everyone wins, no one is left behind, and Alberta for all. Thank you. Now, where's Dave?
I'll get him. Just stepped up.
Anyone like to make any comment? While we're waiting for Dave. I gotta say, I was listening to Jason Kenney the other day, and I keep watching all of the social media blurbs that keep coming out, and I have to tell you, one thing that's clear is he never sheds a lot of light on the actual numbers of jobs that might get created from these various, I'll call it greening strategies. We have like lithium mines they're talking about now, 20,000 ton a year lithium mine that's being touted. I don't know if there's subsidies attached to that, we don't know, but one thing we know for sure is a lithium mine is a lot more destructive to the environment than an oil sands mine that's got buffalo roaming on it. I used to work there, and they sure changed that and put it right back to its initial condition. So a lithium mine is not a long-term solution. I see solar farms popping up all over Alberta that are ruining our farms. In the long term, young people should be thinking about this. It's more interesting and better to have food being grown on those great pieces of property than having solar farms that are destroying those. Kenny talks a lot about, and so does the NDP, they talk about hydrogen strategies. Well, I used to work in the hydrogen industry, so I know something about hydrogen. And one of the things they talked about was actually having pipelines set up so that we would export hydrogen south. Ultimately, that's where it's going to go. If you have a pipeline, it's going to go south. Well, it's already dumb enough that we export $20 to $40 billion of lost profit every single year, and we succumb to being raw producers while they refine it down south. So to think about it, all we're really doing in that case is we're shipping hydrogen down south so that they can refine it to become the more clean product, when we could keep that hydrogen, even if we produced it, right here to make the cleanest refined product on planet Earth. So we're again exporting our wealth south, all to satisfy some type of green policy that actually doesn't help the long-term interest of Albertans. So there's a lot of gobbledygook out there. And ultimately, it's not in our interest to do that. You know, taking our natural gas and converting it to hydrogen to then ship it down south makes absolutely no sense when we can use it locally. There's even opportunities, as some in this room have put together as well, talking about the use of biomass in order to make hydrogen, which actually is a form of being able to make our refined products even cleaner using biomass, which is fully renewable. We cut a tree down, we make another. One thing we know in Alberta is that trees grow really fast, you know, for the certain types of trees that we have. So if you put the right ones in place, you now have the ability to make hydrogen, which actually gives you the ability to refine that product and make us be in this big picture for the long term and recapture that $20 to $40 billion while we grow the industry even larger. Dave, did you want to lead the next speaker?
Well, does anybody have questions? I know there was lots online I got to scroll through. Anybody here have any questions? And actually, I have a question. Maybe I'll lead it off. Did we go into the societal section at all, CW? Your societal? No. Not on this one, eh? Did you want to touch on that? Can you do that real quick?
Well, societies really is, real in itself is that each one of the 87 ridings would have a society. The important part about a society at the end of the day, which is somewhat has some equivalency of a current day constituency association, is that a society has the ability to, over the long term, the ability to actually select the MLA that they want to represent them. So, you know, we as it sits right now with the society, the intention is for those societies to get out, educate Albertans on a common sense plan for a republic, and ultimately to become part of that ultimate process for selection of candidates in their particular constituency that represents them, and I'll just say looks just like them as well.
Okay, perfect. Anybody else have questions before I scroll? Oh man, it's lots. Go, anybody else? Let's see here. So we got this one. They say, they say to me, but this, I'm going to let you answer this. I know the answer, but I don't believe that a landlocked nation can force another country to build a pipeline through it. Transport on roads, yes, but a pipeline, I'm not convinced. Do you want to touch on that, or do you want me?
Well, I guess my first comment is that once we make a decision to become a new republic, the walls are not going to go up larger than they are now. If anything, there will be all of a sudden become a softer stance, just from the standpoint of the rest of Canada will benefit significantly from an unleashed and prosperous Alberta. So over the long term, it's not in the interest for the rest of Canada or BC to just say no. And I think there's actually a significant contingent of people in BC who actually would like to become a part of the Republic of Alberta when it all boils down to it, because we get a significant number of people talking to us saying, look, if Alberta leaves, I'm going with you. Now, it may not include the mainland Vancouver and Vancouver Island, but I'll tell you, the rest of the province, a lot of people are ready to go. And the same applies for Saskatchewan and a lot of Manitobans. So, at the end of the day, Alberta is the head of the snake. We've been ripped off since 1905. We need to actually leave, get on our own, and there'll be a significant number of people and people in other provinces that will more than be happy to actually come join us. And I think that in itself will play significantly to us getting what we want in the context of pipelines, pipeline access, and otherwise.
Should probably speak to the international treaty.
I think, yeah, CW, what they're looking at here, and it's a lot of comments on that. They want to know about international law, our landlocked nations treaty, what happens with the IMO as a nation, or if you don't mind, maybe I'll speak to it, everybody, just to help them out here. The idea here is that we're a region. We're called a province. That's our country. Since 1948, UN states this is the law of sovereignty given worldwide. That's international law, binding law since 1948. that sovereignty of nations doesn't apply to us, the province, which is a region by the classic definition, or internal states like the USA, or territories, or many other versions, including region, which is what the UK uses for its term of a province. So they don't get the same international rights as we all do. And once we become a nation, guess what? We get those international rights too. There are 52 landlocked nations on this earth right now, and there's a tremendous 35% of them in that first world category, which is Europe and throughout here, obviously Canada, but they're not landlocked. But our region would be too, just like those European nations right through Asia. They all get massive access. They get their pipelines. You know what, everybody? Go look it up. They even have navies. A landlocked nation, even Asian, Mongolia has a navy. So Alberta could do just the same thing. There are African countries that go through, war-torn countries with above ground pipeline. They go through 5 of them all the way to the coast, and they also run a navy and their own transport as a UN landlocked nation. That's the truth. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to go through a couple more. Your Facebook went down. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on, but I'm just going to look at these.
I'll tell you what, Dave, why don't we let a few of the other speakers speak, and then we can come back to questions later. And that way we can put the questions out to a number of people. How's that?
Sure, okay.
So just to close, I am an Alberta patriot, and I'm 100% committed to a Republic of Alberta.
Thank you, Sylvia. That was a really good presentation. I'm so loud, hey, every Facebook's. And I know the speaker feedback somewhere. Are you hearing feedback there? I'm gonna have to play with this for Marilyn because she's very soft-spoken. We're like polar opposites on the vocal. But so my next speaker, everybody, is going to be Marilyn Burns. She's a lawyer right here in Alberta. She's had the most impressive life story I've ever seen in a Alberta proud woman here. She is. She developed 2 parties. She's a founder, one of the original founders of the Wild Rose. And you know what? She did the Alberta Advantage Party. She's a builder. She's an expert in what she does. And she also is a lawyer, which is, this will be the first time a lawyer's come forward for independence for a nation of Alberta, we'll say, and bring you the Constitution. So this is a real treat. Never, ever been done before. It's true. You're another pioneer, Marilyn. This is what, your 4th time? Okay, come on up here. Give her a big hand.
Thank you, Dave. I'd rather not speak loudly, that's true. Okay, we're good? Okay, thank you.
Keep it up.
I am a new convert to the view that Alberta must become its own nation. I spoke 1 year ago at the Freedom Talk, November 2009. You can Google that. Freedom Talk, November 2019, Marilyn Burns, about how we would become a nation. What would the process be if we chose to do that? But at that time, I did that out of interest, because the interest in Alberta's independence was growing, and I thought that I should know that. And I found out that we could do it. Very difficult, but there is a process, so Google that. I'm not going to repeat that. So my conclusion at that point, though, was that I didn't think we should go that way, because I didn't think Albertans were ready to put the load of that work onto their shoulders. Then in the last 2 or 3 months, I've come to the conclusion that whether we're completely ready or not, there are many great Albertans who are ready for that work, and we don't have a choice. So on September 29th, I stepped down as the leader of the Alberta Advantage Party. And I spoke last month approximately to David Bjorkman about the reasons that I had come to the conclusion that we should become a nation and that I would begin to work that way. And I'm not going to repeat those reasons because you can go to David Bjorkman's Facebook page to find out those reasons. And I spoke briefly also on the pros and cons and the doability and non-doability of some of the firewall items, and I'm not going to repeat that here. Dave asked me to speak about the Constitution of the nation of Alberta. I'm not going to go into much detail. I'm going to go into broad strokes, and I have to warn you, if I've ever made anybody uncomfortable before in their life, I'm going to do it even more so now.
Yeah, that's right.
First and foremost, when we draft the Constitution of the nation of Alberta, we must indicate that God is supreme. The recognition of the supremacy of God is what has kept the United States of America and Canada great for so many years, decades. And we can see the crumbling down of society, the pushing back of acknowledging God is bringing down the greatness of our nations, and we have to make sure that we recognize our God. The second thing I want to talk about is what CW triggered me on, and I'm going to lay the credit and blame directly at the feet of CW. When he talked about the question of whether we should become a sovereign nation or not, rather than under the monarchy, and that really got me thinking and digging. Now, the history of the monarchy began in about 1,000 years after Christ. That was when William the Conqueror came through Britain. Now, the royal family, as we call them, or the monarchy, they're German. They came from the mainland of Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and these great armies, tremendous landowners, and they didn't have corporate wealth back then, but they took land. They subjugated people through killing, through destroying the lives of ordinary people in those lands, and through their great armies, they took huge swaths of land. Now you have to think about giving credit where credit is due, because the putting in place those kinds of armies was not easy. You had to think about movement, you had to think about food, you had to think about transportation, over land, over sea. And then they gave themselves the presumptuous title of king, queen, prince, princess. And that has traveled through for 1,000 years, where these pompous titles of vast landowners and corporate wealthy people call themselves kings and queens and lords over us. They did not keep this succession gently. They killed each other for it. They beheaded people for it, of their own relatives, their brothers and sisters and cousins, for the chance to be so powerful. Then they decided to come overseas and take even more. They came to North America. And we know the story of our First Nations peoples. They went all over the planet, taking land, killing people, seizing assets, to become wealthier and wealthier and more powerful. When we look at the Constitution of Canada, and this really triggered more thoughts for me, when you look at Section 91 of the Constitution of Canada, it starts out, and Section 91 lists the responsibilities of the federal government. Section 92 lists the responsibilities of the provincial government. This has been in the work. This was in the works since the 1920s approximately, under the Statute of Westminster. If anybody ever wants to ask me about that, you can. I've got a copy of it. I've read it thoroughly. And it begins, section 91. It shall be lawful for the Queen, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate and the House of Commons, to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of Canada, etc. So in other words, who's making the decisions for the federal government and for the provinces, with the Queen, with the consent and advice of the Senate and the Parliament of Canada, and Alberta. So this gives one thought. If we're going to become a nation, do we want to have a monarchy? That is a very, very critical question.
No.
No. Yeah.
We
no
don't need
way.
a queen.
And everyone in this room is saying no. And I'm going to tell you that since this has been playing in my mind, I've been asking people who want to have, what do you ever call it, separation, independence, nation building. Those who do want to stay within Canada, and those who don't know yet. Unanimously, people are saying they do not want the monarchy. Even those who want to stay within Canada. Now, again, giving credit where credit is due. Elizabeth Windsor, who we call Queen Elizabeth, I'm going to call her Mrs. Windsor. She has been the head of a very, very stable corporation and land holding company with across the planet for a long time, and you have to give her credit. She's done it in a very stable manner. There have been few wars fought with knowledge of, with her knowledge, and we don't know with her approval because that's all kept very secret. But she has kept a very stable system going, and some of her systems have been very good. So when we're talking about building the nation of Alberta, we may not want to throw out all of the systems. We may want to keep some. We may want to tweak some. We may want to throw some out completely and start them again. I'm talking about, and I'll deal with this after, the powers within Alberta. We have, our education system, our healthcare system, our banking, some of our taxation, etc. CW's touched on that, but these are all things we might want to talk about. I'm going to deal with Section 91 a bit later. But when we take a look at who is the next successor of the Windsor family, the Windsor Corporation, that should shake everyone in their boots. Charles Windsor, now known as Prince Charles, who will become King Charles, is someone who we should dread. Recently, Charles Windsor said at Davos that we must use the cover of COVID in order to put in place our reset. Otherwise, we're going to have to wait for a long time. Now, anyone who knows anything about this reset, and Trudeau has been talking about it recently, knows that it is something called Agenda 21. And they're also talking about 2030. And I'm just going to list for you in point form what their plan is for 2021, which Justin Trudeau, and I'm going to suggest the leader of the CPC party, Erin O'Toole, and Jason Kenney are also working very hard at. This is what they want in Agenda 21. One world government, one world currency, one world central bank, one world military, the end of privately owned property, and the end of the family unit. They want us to breed like cats and dogs, and children are mostly raised by the state. Depopulation and density control. Mandatory multiple vaccines, basic universal income, a microchip society for travel and tracking, a social credit system so that if you're a good citizen, you get more privileges. If you kind of, kick against the powers that be a bit, you don't get as much. Appliances hooked up to 5G, so it's an internet of all devices. The government raising of children. The government school system and post-education system. Human settlements and the end of single dwelling houses. No private transportation. No land irrigation, private farms, or grazed livestock. Restricted land use. Ban of non-synthetic drugs and medicine. End of fossil fuels. Trudeau said shortly after he became the Prime Minister that Canada was the first post-national state. We must come together as the people of Alberta with love and understanding, despite some of our differences, to know that this is Alberta's true enemy. It is a clear and present and immediate danger. But we don't want to be like 10-year-olds who are running away from home. We want to be ready for building this great nation of Alberta. And so intelligent people, as CW has indicated, must get together and be together to determine the items that will be in our Constitution. We have rights and freedoms to talk about. We have principles to talk about. We have, as he said, the necessity for recall and representative government, however that may be. But I want to read for you how deep this is and how complicated this is for the intelligent and we ordinary people of Alberta. We must put together teams who will understand how to deal with the Section 91 items. I'm going to read them to you. Number 1, the public debt and property. Number 2, the regulation of trade and commerce. Number 3, unemployment insurance. Number 4, the raising of money by any mode or system of taxation. I want to make a comment here that this is why I don't see any sense to Alberta joining the US. When we shake off the shackles of sending tax money to Ottawa, why would we want to send it to Washington, D.C.? Number 4, the borrowing of money on the public credit. In other words, going into debt. Number 5, the postal service. Number 6, the census and statistics. Number 7, militia, military, and naval services and defense. Number 8, the fixing of and providing for the salaries and allowances of civil and other officers of the Government of Canada. Number 9, this one won't matter, beacons, buoys, lighthouses, and Sable Island. Number 10, navigation and shipping. Number 11, quarantine and the establishment and maintenance of marine hospitals. 12, seacoast and inland fisheries. 13, ferries between a province and any British or foreign country or between two countries. Strike that, 2 provinces. Here's an important one. Number 14, currency and exchange. 15, banking, incorporation of banks, and the issuance of paper money. 16, savings banks. Number 17, weights and measures. Number 18, bills of exchange and promissory notes. 19, interest. 20, legal tender. 21, bankruptcy and insolvency. Most people don't realize that's a federal matter. 22, patents of invention and discovery. 23, copyrights. 24, Indians and lands reserved for the Indians. Won't it be nice when we can live in equality with our First Nations folks? Number 25, naturalization and aliens, in other words, immigration. 26, marriage and divorce. 27, the criminal law, except the constitution of courts of criminal jurisdiction, but including the procedure in criminal matters. Somebody's going to have to rewrite a criminal code.
Right on, Marilyn, that's what you're gonna do. Oh, get everybody.
28, the establishment, maintenance, and management of penitentiaries. 29, such classes of subjects as are expressly accepted in the list of what's for the provinces. And what's not in here is environment, because that wasn't thought of when this was put in place. Now I'm going to read to you what presently are provincial jurisdictions, and this goes to the combination of our Constitution. When we're combining the federal and provincial matters, a lot of thought has to go into this as well. There may be an interim process, but I'm just going to read just so that people really know what our provincial responsibilities are supposed to be right now. Provincial taxation. The borrowing of money on the province's credit, for the credit of the province, in other words, provincial debt. The establishment and tenure of provincial offices and the appointment and payment of provincial officers. The management and sale of public lands belonging to the province and of the timber and wood. The establishment, maintenance, and management of public and reformatory prisons in the province. So there's something that you could easily merge together with the federal responsibilities. The establishment, maintenance, and management of hospitals, asylums, and charities in Alberta. And there's this long word in here called eleemosynary institutions. So we had to look this up and figure out what that was. It basically means they're more, the charity probably, or not for profits, that kind of thing. Word we don't use anymore. Municipal institutions of the province are municipal governments. This is an interesting one. Shop, saloon, tavern, auctioneer, and other licenses in order to raise revenue for provincial, local, and municipal purposes. We probably just call that red tape right now. Local works and undertakings, except for the steamships and the railways and the canals and the telegraphs, and those types of things that are federal. The incorporation of provincial companies, the solemnization of marriage, property and civil rights in the province. Ironically, of course, Agenda 21 wants to remove that. The administration of justice in the province, including the constitution, maintenance, and organization of provincial courts, civil and criminal. 15, the imposition of punishment by fine, penalty, imprisonment, and enforcing provincial laws, and other provincial matters. So you get a picture of the big job we have in drafting a constitution to deal with all these matters, not just the constitution, but the number of laws that we're going to have to pull out of Ottawa to draft for Alberta, for the nation of Alberta alone. Now, Section 92A deals with our non-renewable resources, and so that's something else we'll need to deal with. 93 deals with education. 94A is old age pensions. And 95 deals with agriculture. So all these types of things are provincial, and this is one thing I will touch on when it comes to pensions. I wasn't aware of this until this last month. But the Parliament of Canada is to make the laws in relation to pensions. However, I'm going to read this carefully. The Parliament of Canada may make laws, and that's a may, in relation to old age pensions and supplementary benefits, including survivors, and disability benefits irrespective of age, but no such law shall affect the operation of any law present or future of a provincial legislature in relation to any such matter. And I didn't know this, and I didn't know anybody who knew that the provinces have the right to make their own pension plans. We just gave that up, except for Quebec. That's why we don't have an Alberta pension plan. We have every right to begin an Alberta pension plan today. So So, and that's just a bit of food for thought. It's not really part of my constitutional discussion. That's my presentation today. I know that in a very short time I will have probably ruffled some feathers. But on the other hand, this is the beginning of how we must begin to draft the nation of Alberta's constitution. Thank you for your time.
You got a lot of online questions, Marilyn.
Okay. But do you
so-
want to go like CW said? Do you want to take the questions later or what?
We'll hit them now because then people, they leave. You got a big jump in here following. Real quick here, just a couple for people. They want to ask about, they call it comparative law in legal terms, like another nation stuff. Are we going to look at civil rights from other nations? A lot of people ask about the Second Amendment, gun rights, which is a civil right. We're going to be able to do that, Marilyn? Or are we going to be able to open it up to comparative law, international law of the world too, as well as just Canada and Alberta?
That's the only sensible way to go. We don't have to start brand new with a new template. There's lots of templates all over the world. We might even want to build on what we have in Canada, what's in the United States, what's around the world. We really don't want to have to start from scratch when there's good success elsewhere in the world.
Marilyn, thank you. Anybody else? Constitutional questions? Anybody?
That's all I was going to ask. Can we build off of something like the American Constitution and tweak it in our country?
All options would be open, I would suggest. And I would also suggest that there are many people in Alberta who are really interested in the Constitution. I've received different documents where people have literally sat down and drafted the Constitution. And I haven't read them, honestly, because I really wasn't in that mindset.
But it is up to the people, not the politicians.
Correct. Absolutely, it must be up to the people of Alberta.
Okay. Okay, everybody, Marilyn Burns, big round of applause. One more time. Yeah, that's really good. So we have more speakers here, everybody watching. Your viewership went up pretty good there. So anybody, I know a few of you, and if we're going to do Vince, or we do Danny, or do we have Dennis, or what about Steve? Are you going to take her away, Vince?
Who'd like to go next?
I have a few things to say.
Okay.
Danny,
Just
you
gonna-
wanna talk?
Danny, go.
You want to do it, Danny, or you or Slane if you want it?
You know me, I can talk now, I can talk later, I can just.
But
All
you-
right, let's get
You
Danny.
go up, Danny, just because me is like, just so everybody knows, Danny Hozak, economist, he built Massive Forums Foundation too. This guy's an Alberta farmer, really highly educated and a hard worker. This is a true patriot, a real Alberta builder. It's been just a pleasure to meet you, Danny, all these years. It's great. Take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We talk about being highly educated. It reminds me of that saying. It said, the problem with experience is it often teaches you something you never wanted to know. So I've had quite a bit of education, some of which I didn't actually want to know. But in any event, thank you for being here today. I think I'm going to cover some of the things that CW and Marilyn mentioned. I also mentioned our Freedom website, and thank you for mentioning that, Marilyn, and thank you for speaking last fall at our conference. So in any event, to understand Alberta's frustration with Confederation, you need to understand its history, and most of you do, but hopefully some of you that are watching, maybe this will be new to you, but Canadians and even most Albertans do not know the history of the province, the long and abusive history of servitude to a mean-spirited master in Ottawa. You may think that's a bit harsh, and you'd be right. It is, not me saying it, but the reality of how Ottawa thinks of and treats Alberta. It began before Alberta was a province Ottawa created with the sole purpose of limiting political clout from the West and taxing the region to its own benefit. Back in 1904, Canada's Interior Minister, a man by the name of Clifford Sifton, said, "We desire, in fact every patriotic Canadian desires, that the great trade of the prairies shall go to enrich our own people in the East, to build up our factories and our workshops of Eastern Canada and contribute in every way to our prosperity. In other words, the riches of the prairies belong to the East. Justin's recent throne speech assured Eastern Canadians that he and his government are intent on doubling down on Clifford Sifton's dream. This is the second time in many of our lifetimes that a federal government supported by Eastern voters has destroyed a generation of Albertans' accumulated wealth, along with the hopes and dreams of hundreds of thousands of families, businesses, and communities. In both cases, it happened as a result of a direct, calculated, and concerted attack on our energy industries. Despite having our wealth and our economy devastated twice in 2 generations, Albertans have managed to send approximately $630 billion net to Ottawa during the past 30 years. In May of 2019, Jason Kenney came to power, promising to end this injustice with decisive action on equalization, followed by the creation of the Fair Deal Panel, tasked with charting a course to economic recovery for Alberta. However, today, 18 months later, the tough talk on equalization has become a promise of a referendum in the fall of 2021, and the Fair Deal Panel's 6 months of meetings and studies have led to more months of meetings and more studies. So here we are, 115 years into Confederation and 18 months into a Jason Kenney government, and we are still standing, or perhaps kneeling, on the doorstep of Confederation with our hat in our hands and their Eastern hands in our pockets. Thank you to our host, thank you to our organizers, fellow participants, and to those of you watching online for caring enough about our province and our future to want to be part of a growing number of Albertans that are demanding a new and better deal for Alberta. Thank you also for inviting me to attend and participate. As Dave said, I'm the chairman of the Economic Education Association, and I have a number of suggestions which I would like to add to the public discussion. Suggestion number 1. Although we and Albertans are incredibly frustrated with Confederation, we are not the first to be so frustrated. Michael Wagner has written a very good book entitled Alberta Separatism, Then and Now. To quote Leon Craig in the foreword, it does what Hobbes proclaims all worthwhile history should do, secretly instruct the reader, conveying practical lessons of lasting importance. As you may or may not know, there have been approximately a dozen previous independent/separatist parties, none of which have succeeded. My action step number 1, and my suggestion to you folks tonight, is to get the book, read it, learn from it, be part of a group that finally succeeds. Suggestion number 2. I would like to thank Premier Kenney for creating the Fair Deal Panel and for his promise to hold a referendum on at least some issues that are important to Albertans in the fall of 2021 in conjunction with the municipal elections. The Fair Deal Panel meetings achieved several objectives that are important to our discussion. First, the meetings brought the 20-year-old firewall proposals back to the forefront of public discussion. Secondly, about 65 to 70% of respondents indicated that they wanted the various firewall initiatives implemented by the Alberta government, and they wanted it done sooner rather than later. Thirdly, 1/3 of the respondents said they wanted to achieve more autonomy from Ottawa by voting for independence, and an additional 40% said that they were sympathetic to the idea of independence failing prompt, successful action within the country. In or out of the country, Albertans would be better off were the firewall initiatives implemented. And the CW did a nice job of laying out the numbers to show just how much better off we would be. And thank you for that, CW. Action step number 2. Let's all urge the Kenney government to press ahead with implementation plans for the firewall initiatives. Put them to a referendum in 2021, and assuming the referendum votes are successful, be prepared to start implementation of the firewall initiatives on the Monday following the 2021 vote. I agree with CW as well when he said, we don't really need a referendum on equalization. I don't think most of us know anyone that doesn't want it changed. Suggestion number 3, accountability and recall. None of us would hire someone to work for our business and tell them, if you show up for work on Monday, I will give you a company credit card and checkbook, and your next job review will be in 4 years. and we certainly would not give them permission to mortgage our business. Yet somehow we have created a system that only has job reviews every 4 years and can mortgage our future with deficit spending. The fact that our country's and our province's debts seem to be spiraling out of control is sufficient proof that our current system is not working. Hiring/electing a political leader without a recall option is like buying a car without brakes. It's an accident waiting to happen, and deficit spending is what my friend calls immoral, and it should be illegal. Thank you. So my suggested action step number 3 is we should all ask Premier Kenney to include both recall legislation and balanced budget implementation legislation as 2 binding referendum questions in next fall's municipal elections. He's quite happy to ask us to have a meaningless vote on equalization, but let's ask him to have an actual meaningful referendum on both recall and balanced budget legislation next fall. Let's give him something to think about. Suggestion number 4. All of the various separatist independence groups should do their best to support and encourage each other. They are all trying to create a movement that has the platform, the supporters, and the prospective candidates to win an election and lead a province or a country, as the case may be. I encourage you all to support each other where you can, and as much as possible refrain from criticizing each other's groups. Everyone is trying to move Alberta toward a brighter future, and I encourage each one of you and your groups to concentrate on growing your parties based on your vision for the future. As election 2023 approaches, the grassroots supporters that we all claim to want to represent will have to choose the party and or representatives that they feel are most able to win and then lead our new country. Finally, my last comment and a request. Despite the best efforts of dozens of parties and thousands of dedicated volunteers and supporters, our province is in more peril than I've seen in my lifetime. Ralph Klein rather cynically once said, "Show me a big enough parade, and I would be happy to lead it." Our Economic Education Association is committed to creating a parade of well-informed voters so compelling that every politician in Alberta will want to lead it. Interested folks can go to our website at freedomtalk.ca. We strive to facilitate an intelligent, respectful discussion of the difficult and controversial issues facing our province and our country. We have been, and we plan to continue to lead this discussion on what we call the Firewall Plus, leading to either more autonomy or a separate country, as voters will decide at some point in time. And we intend to continue to lead that discussion until we have such a broad-based following of well-informed voters that we will have a parade that will compel prospective politicians to lead. Our next conference will be on February 18th and 19th, and we intend to focus on our fiscal imbalance and accountability, COVID permitting. Please mark your calendar and send us any suggestions you may have. Please go to our Freedom Talk website. You can see the work that we have done. You can send us suggestions for our upcoming conference. You can subscribe to our newsletters. And most importantly, you can donate to help us continue to work to make Alberta great again. Thank you for listening, and please sign up and donate to help us help Alberta along the road to recovery. Your grandchildren and future generations will thank you, as do I. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
That was Danny Hozak. Another big round of applause. He's a trooper. We're Alberta Patriot. Now we're going to have Vincent Byfield come up. He's going to talk to you. He's Family Legacy of Alberta Report. He's a journalist, and he's going to give you a little presentation to talk about some what ifs here. They're real Albertans here. Built something quite special. Thanks, Vince.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you to everybody for coming. I think you guys, I really learned a lot today, and I want to thank you. CW, I have a few sort of takeaways from each of your presentations, and the big one that I got from CW was that for anyone who's scared of the idea of, is that better?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. For anyone out there who is a little bit scared about the idea of going it alone or separation, you don't need to be. I mean, as CW very clearly spelled out, we have a great province. We have a lot of resources. We have a lot of great people. The spirit of Albertans is amazing. Every day you see it. And the way we help each other, I don't think you have anything to be afraid of. In fact, the options are so much better than what we have now. So thank you, CW, for pointing that out. And Marilyn, you gave a lot of really good points, but the one thing that I really remember is what you started with. We have no choice. We have to go this way. And it's just the responsible thing for any good parent who's concerned about the welfare of their kids or their grandkids. We just have to go this way. And I want to thank you also for bringing up God. I think that's really. And Danny, I always love hearing Danny because he's real. And the one thing that I took away from Danny, I like the fact that you gave a lot of praise to Jason Kenney. And I'm not saying the man is perfect. No, he's definitely not perfect. Who is, right? But his heart is in the right place, I believe. I've known him a long time. And I think that we do far more when we work from within rather than working apart. And I'm gonna skip a little bit ahead. I got a few notes here, but those are my takeaways. So I want to thank you, Danny, for everything you've done in the past and for really stressing the fact that we must work together as Albertans, and that's what CW said. Alberta for all. We really have to work together, and that's a good sort of segue into what I had to say. So this is my first time doing something like this. So bear with me.
Good. Come on, everybody.
We're here for you.
Yeah.
So I was going to start off with sort of an Alcoholics Anonymous opening by saying, and so if you guys know the routine, I'm going to say, hi, my name is Vince Byfield, and I'm a real Albertan.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I kind of say it that way because I'm not trying to say that it's a bad thing to be an Albertan, far from, but that nowadays when you listen to the politics and the politicians, I'm thinking Rachel, where recently she tried to sort of out members of the UCP. If you even think about the idea of being a sovereigntist, then that makes you a bad person. And that's the kind of, I was trying to say, where did I hear that before? And I'm actually reminded, this was a standard tactic. Hang on, I gotta read my notes here. In fact, there was a playbook that came where they would pick out one special enemy for special vilification. And the guy's playbook I'm talking about is Joseph Goebbels. And so when Rachel Notley tries to create that one enemy for vilification, that's the kind of we're Albertans. We're above that. So let's work together on that. So yeah, exactly. That was Joseph Goebbels was Hitler's minister of propaganda. Yeah. So I wanted to quickly. Dave gave me 10 minutes, and I'm going to try and be fast. So, but back So as Dave pointed out, I literally grew up working for Alberta Report News Magazine. I was actually technically longer than either of my brothers, Mike Byfield or Link Byfield. I was literally there at the very first making of the magazine. But back in '83, when the National Energy Program was in gear, and we'd moved into a new neighborhood in Edmonton, and our next door neighbors it was quite strange. There was nobody living there. And so I peered in, and so he had lost his home. He had lost his home. And that was back when oil went down to $8 a barrel. And he had built that home from scratch. That was their dream, that home. And so he, the bankers came in, they took the home, and they said that he could take anything that was inside the house, but he had to leave the house. And he was so mad. Well, the weird thing is when I looked in through the windows, he did take everything from inside the house. Literally. There was no floor. There was no walls. He took everything from inside that house because he was so mad. And I felt for him, Everything he had lived in and dreamed about was gone because of that. And home is a powerful place. It's women I think root into a home more than men, but it's very, very important for us. So home is going to figure into my talk here a little bit. So in my journey to my first sort of encounter with separatism or sovereignty was a thing called the Western Canada concept. And the fellow that I interviewed a couple of years back called Gordon Kessler, who was the first MLA, in fact I think it's the only MLA to ever be elected who had a sovereigntist platform. And so I was interviewing him, and he now lives in Arizona, and great guy. And he advocated still for sovereignty, but he's gone one step further. Now, for the sake of CW, I'm not going to get into where he's at just yet, but the only person I've got here to take him seriously when I was interviewing him was the U.S. consulate. And so they brought him in, they interviewed him very extensively, and I think it's important to note here that when he met with them, they had this file on him that was 3 inches thick, he said. And he was a bit surprised by that. And he asked them, wow, am I really that interesting to you? And they said, this is not our file. This is the RCMP's file on you. So be aware. He gave me a tip, and I think it's an important one for everyone here. He said, don't think that the Laurentians are going to go quietly into the night. Be aware and prepare. And I think some people are going to talk about this. And the only thing that I want to stress is, and it's building on what Danny was saying, working from within. When we work within the Westminster parliamentary system and we create new parties, we are, I think, feeding into their plan, dividing and conquering. We need to really work as one united front. And that's key. When you look in the United States, there's 2 big parties. There's the Democrats and the Republicans. I'm not going to get into the election. But it's really, really important, because when we start to split our vote, that's my father, Ted Byfield, that's his biggest fear right now, is that all these new parties are going to start popping up, and all they're going to do is elect Rachel Notley. And it's really, really important that when we do this movement, and that movement has to happen, that we think outside of the parliamentary system. Think like the Tea Party movement. I think it's really, really important that we work and build and become maybe not a competitor to the UCP, but a conscience to the UCP. And when we do that, and I've talked with constituency association leaders within the UCP, they said, if you go that way, then we can work with you. And we want to work with you. So we are able to unite. So I really strongly recommend that we move in a fashion that does not create another party, because then we are basically falling into the divide and conquer playbook. So, all right. So I by day publish books, history books. So I appreciated Danny's point there. Appreciate you promoting Michael Wagner's book. I've got a few here. Here's a book that I think that it should be mandatory reading. It is published in 1910, and it's Alwyn Bramley Moore's book. It's called Canada and Her Colonies, or Home Rule for Alberta. This is a very powerful book, and if you were to ever read it, you would be shocked to discover that this conversation that we're having today is almost verbatim the conversation that he was talking about over 100 years ago. We've been at this game a long time, and he's an amazing man. He was one of our first MLAs, and then he went and fought in World War I and died on the front lines. But it's an exceptionally good book, and I strongly recommend it. I'm just going to bring one piece from this, which is he talks about, hang on, I got to make sure, Bramley Moore. Oh yeah, he brings up something that I didn't know anything about, because a lot of our social studies doesn't talk about these things. The Canada Act of 1791. And not a lot of people know about that. They certainly don't talk about it. That was brought out right after the American Revolution. And the American Revolution, basically, I'm sure there's a lot of things in the Canada Act, but the one key thing that he brought up in his book is the fact that essentially the British agreed that all the money that was raised in the new Canadas, and remember this is 1791, so there was no Canada as we know it. It was Upper and Lower Canada, which is now Ontario and Quebec. But all the money that was going to be raised in those countries through taxation colonies would stay in those colonies. In other words, the Brits agreed that they were never going to take any money out of Ontario or Quebec's economy. That was in 1791. So later, that's certainly not the case within Canada now. And I'll get into that. So yeah, if we skip to today, the other book that I brought up here is this one, which recently came out, called The Moment of Truth. It's a really good book. They talk a lot about the options that are on the table. But there's one thing that they don't talk about. They've got it here, it's number 2, 51st State, but they actually don't talk about that one too much. But so I encourage you to read that book. There is one thing that is brought up a lot. It's brought up by Mintz, and I'm sure it's not a number I have heard. CW may have brought it up, but in fact, you bring up a lot more. Jason has used this number a lot. The number $630 billion, which is the amount of money the net amount of money that has been taken out of the Alberta economy since 1961 through the Equalization Program and the Fiscal Stabilization Fund. So I believe that's in nominal dollars. Is that right, CW, or do you know if they inflation adjusted it? Do you know? I don't know.
It's nominal. It's nominal. I'm on this, but even worse is the Canadian debt too.
Yeah. No, I agree. This is just basically the tip of the iceberg. Jason's only talking about one part of it, but let's just work with that for a moment. And you brought this up, CW. This works out to a little under $150,000 per man, woman, and child. So for a family of 4, that's $600,000, right? That's $600,000. That could have been a home. I'm getting back to the home idea here. And basically, every single Alberta family could have had a home for that, but they're not going to get it now. Really nice home. Yeah, exactly, a nice home. So, and if they had a home, it could have been their retirement, right? So, all right. So here we are today. And as I see it, we have the options on the table are very similar to what CW said. Do nothing, or fix Canada, per se, or go for the Republic, and I'm going to mention it, CW, join the U.S. But I'm only going to mention it briefly here. So, first of all, do nothing. That's what we're doing now, doing nothing. And if you want to know where that leads, think Soviet Union, think Cuba, think Venezuela. Cuba's an interesting one because you go to Cuba and it's weird. It's like you've just went back in time to the 1950s. And why is that? Well, because Cuba first left Spain and then embraced free enterprise and freedom, and they started to really take off. And then Fidel shows up, right? And it's as if the economy just stopped dead. So that's where we're going. I think that if we continue to do nothing, our kids are going to be looking at driving around in, well, they'll be lucky if it's a 2020 truck or car. It's more likely going to be something less than that. I think we're really going to start seeing ghost towns here in Alberta. I think we already got one. Grand Cache, really, is essentially almost a ghost town. So, Calgary.
Yeah, don't.
So do nothing. That's one option, and certainly the one we're doing right now. Now, Fix Canada. Yeah, Manning talked a lot about Fix Canada in this book. Preston Manning has the first chapter, and he's a very clever writer. He obviously is pro-Canada, pro-federalist, or a Confederate, as I like to say. Anyway, he talks about joining, or he describes going the route of separatism as being a little Westerner. And if you want to stay in Canada, you're a big Westerner. But the little Westerners, what I found interesting is, and this is just a plug for 51st State. Oh, sorry. Louder or speed it? Okay. Oh my God.
You got it. Go ahead. You got time. Go.
What did you want to say?
Just keep going. It's
All right.
Vince.
Okay. So if you go for a republic, if you go with a little Western, if you go with a sort of the little Western concept, if you read his chapter and you actually consider the idea of joining the United States, and you read that chapter, he actually builds the case for joining the U.S. if you read it. So just keep it in mind when you're reading that. In fact, there's a lot of these chapters, if you read them, and then you have that option on the table, you discover that they are actually creating a heck of a case for joining the U.S. So anyway, now going for a republic, third option. Now that even if you become consider the idea of statehood, you have to go the route of a republic. I've been talking actually and conversing with about 20 constitutional professors, U.S. constitutional professors. And so I want to go a little bit, this is your turf, Marilyn, but it's interesting stuff. So first of all, Article 11 of the Articles of Confederation. This predates the U.S. Constitution. Article 11 is often called the Canada Clause. And the reason it is because little is known that there were more than 13 colonies that stood up to the monarchy. And actually, there were insurgents in Nova Scotia as well. They didn't win because the British were strongly entrenched in Nova Scotia. So those insurgents were suppressed. But it was very much something that the British kept in mind. And so the Article 11 is interesting because it states that, I'm paraphrasing, that if any territory of Canada chose to leave and join the United States, that they guaranteed that it would be accorded the same status as one of the 13 colonies. In other words, completely equal to all the other 13 states. And that was really important. In fact, that laid the groundwork for later, as the other territories became states. They then said, well, if you're going to give that kind of status to these Canadians, then it's only fair that you give us that status. So the United States, which I would argue has become a beacon, and it's true, it's not perfect, it's not, it's far from perfect, but it's done an amazing job. And that Canada Clause actually wound up creating the system in the United States that we have now. So that was quite interesting to learn. So if you go, still on the idea of the republic, this has actually been done before CW, and that's when I was talking to these constitutional professors, they said that the best example in history to compare Alberta to would be Texas. And they said, because Texas, before it became a state, was a republic. It was called the Republic of Texas. And it went from 1823, it was a republic for about 10 years. But before it became a Republic of Texas, it was a state or a province of Spanish Mexico for about 300 years, from roughly 1520 to 1820. That's a long time. But what it tells us is you can break free. They did it, we can break free. And we have to, it tells us also, CW got into this, if anyone is interested in becoming an American state, it ain't going to happen until you become a sovereign nation. The United States has way too many treaties with Canada that respect its territorial integrity. So even if we wanted to be a state, there's no direct to statehood route that doesn't require becoming an independent nation first. So there we go. So the last option, join the U.S. I've already told the story, Article 11. I'm trying to be fast here, CW. So, all right. So I'm going to take. I already talked about the two-party system. I talked about dividing and conquering. All right. So the funny thing I just wanted to mention is that the Ottawa, when they created the equalization program, and I started trying to describe that to my kids, well, how the equalization program worked, and they said, well, that doesn't sound very equal, Dad. It doesn't. It's basically taking Alberta money from Albertans, and they do it through basically taking your federal income tax and adding on a whole bunch of debt for you, and giving it to the other countries. They said, that's not equal. They said, is it like opposite day in Ottawa? And I said, out of the mouths of babes, right? I think pretty much anything that you hear from Ottawa, you kind of have to assume that it's opposite day. If any kind of label they put on it, think of it, reverse it, and then re-hear what they just said, and chances are you're going to find. But I do want to talk a little bit more about the Republic, because one of the powerful things, as you say, is when we create a constitution, we have the power to do so much. And one of the things that my father and my brother championed was this idea of a triple E Senate. And the idea is that it was a great way to balance the needs of proportional representation and regional representation. And even if we go it alone, even if we become our own republic, I really think we should consider a bicameral system. In other words, a legislature like we have now that's representation by population, but also a provincial, or whatever, we'd be national then, our own Senate. And I think that would help to really address some of the concerns that we have between urban Alberta and rural Alberta. It's very real, and it's going to just get worse if we don't address it. So, all right, so, yeah, so I'm just going to finish by saying so at this point, if we go back to that $600,000 number, and effectively, Ottawa has taken your house. And if you have a house, then they've taken your retirement. What are they going to take next? If you don't think it can get worse, I need to remind you to reread Murphy's Law. It can get worse. They can take more. They can start taking your freedoms. Yeah, absolutely. So it is definitely going to get worse. We have to do something. The do nothing option is not an option. So that was the only thing I wanted to end with. Think of our kids. We have to get off of our butts, and we have to vote or get a referendum going for independence as soon as possible.
Thank you, Vince. You bring a great perspective, and of course the history with your dad, and, also brings great things to the table. The part on the United States and becoming that, I like how you talked about the transition, if that was ever to occur. And I think what's important in the new Republic of Alberta is that we're switching from a place where the elites are controlling the people to the people are now taking control of Alberta for the people. So if it was the people's decision that they wanted to be part of statehood, then that could be put forward if that made sense to them. But the first step is to get to the Republic of Alberta, and that's our focus. So thanks, Tim. I just wanted to make a quick comment to Danny's comment about Jason Kenney. And I know he's working hard all the time. I mean, I see him working 18 hours a day. The only question is, who's he working for? So, you know, at the end of the day, I think he's doing a great job as a Federalist. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things, and you see it every single day, less and less about Albertans and what's in our interest, and more about the Green New Deal. Not when you don't say something, it says something. So when when Justin Trudeau talked about the Great Reset, did we hear a single word from Erin O'Toole, Jagmeet Singh, Jason Kenney, Rachel Notley? We heard nothing. We heard crickets.
Get to the podium.
That speaks volumes. So we need to keep that in mind. So hopefully Jason Kenney will actually see the light and see what's important at the end of the day for Albertans. So I always come back to the same one slide every time. And it's a very simple question, but it's a question that all Albertans need to think about. So today we have a $24 billion deficit. We spend $21 billion on healthcare, $18 billion on transportation, education, and other social services, $16 billion on other. Now, if you're an everyday Albertan, and $41 billion that goes to Ottawa. So if you're an everyday Albertan, simple math, which one do you think we should address? 41 billion. Because any other choice means there's less services, wage cuts, job cuts, a lot more harsh coming down the road. We've destroyed our private sector. The public sector's coming next. So if the public sector isn't in tune, you need to be in tune real quick and look at these numbers because they speak volumes of what the choices are. Okay, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Mike Heyer. I have a lot of respect for Mike. Mike is a Cold War veteran, very distinguished. He's run a number of companies in Calgary, including Trinidad Drilling, Trinity Energy, Alter Energy, very successful businessman. A lot of respect for him, an Alberta patriot. Come on up, Mike. He's going to talk about the military strategy that he's put together.
Thank you very much.
Mike, can we get you at the podium? Because that screen's flashing, you guys' face doesn't come in. Right on, perfect.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, sir.
All right, so, I'll start by saying if we're going to walk through a separation, we're going to be on our own. Whether we like it or not, we're in a world that, for lack of a better word, has just turned evil. The last 20 years or so since the end of the Cold War, this planet has just turned on its ear, and at any given time there's anywhere from a dozen to 24 armed conflicts going on the planet. People have always looked towards Canada as a whole as a peacekeeper, or more importantly, a peacemaker. When it comes time to making peace, it's usually the forces from Western Canada that get called out to do that. Most people don't understand that. When you decide you want to be your own nation, the first street credibility that people are going to grant you is when you grant security to them on an international basis. You cannot ignore that. Canada, over the last, well, I'd say since Afghanistan, we have shrunk in size, we've shrunk in capability. We now have liberal mentors in Ottawa that tend to want to strip the military. That's what I had to endure in the 70s when I was a Cold War warrior. We had his dad at the helm, and it just gutted our military and took a long time to rebuild, and we had to do so during warfare. So, to make a long story short, when Cliff asked me to have a look at modeling, all right, what do we do when we get there? And I had to start with first taking all the disingenuous comments that we see from the media and from the politicians saying, well, wow, what are you going to do with the currency? What are you going to do? You're going to be so small. Well, the first few things right off the bat, we're still in the top 20% of GDPs on the planet after separation. A lot of people don't know that. There are countries that after separation would be 1/20th our size that have their own currency. And if you think there's something special about the Canadian currency, think again. Go anywhere and try to spend it in this planet other than in your own country. You can't. It's worthless. You can trade it, get to an airport, here, take some of my Canadian dollars, give me some of your local dollars, but you can't spend it. There's nothing special about a Canadian currency. There's about an American currency, but we can have our own currency. And when it comes to our military, whether anybody likes it or not, we have to have our own military. Now, upon separation, you're kind of faced with a bit of a dilemma. We have a whole pile of old junk. As I like to say, separate, pick up the phone, call Ottawa, come pick up your junk, get out of here, you're trespassing. We're not taking 35-year-old fighter planes, we're not taking, mid to early Cold War vintage tanks, we're not taking any of that stuff with us, but we have to create something credible, and we have to create something credible to respond to what's in front of us. Like I said, the world has become a very mean place, and it's all about brush fires. At any given time, like I said, there's 12 to 20 plus brush fires, what we call asymmetric warfare, so it's re-equipping a force that's capable of responding to those types of venues, not Cold War. I trained hard back in the day, for an air-land battle strategy against the Soviet Union. That will never happen. I don't care whether it's the Russians, whether it's the Chinese, or anybody like that, that will never happen. It's going to be asymmetric warfare, what's called guerrilla warfare. So I modeled a military based around that, incredibly fast-moving, very mobile to get to any destination where you have to get to. If you can't stick any of your hard-hitting assets into a hurt, you don't need them. Because it takes months, if not a year, to mobilize assets, and you can only fight with what you own. So taking the American model, they like to spend a lot of money on equipment and have a lot of reserve status forces that are very well protected. So you'll have federal policies in the Republic of Alberta that protects part-time soldiers. I didn't have that protection when I was in. Most people that were in the military when I was in there, I started as a reservist, they had to quit. If they didn't, their boss would fire them at their regular civilian job. So you'd have those protections. So if you want to look at what we might look like in the future, we might look something like Switzerland. Now, I'm not proposing we get to that size, because Switzerland is a country of just over 9 million people and has 120,000 military, on a per capita basis to Canada. It's almost 4 times the size. And it's about 8 times the size of actual combatants. Their overhead is way less. One thing we do have a problem with here in Canada is we have a lot of legacy bloated bureaucracies, and the Canadian military is one of the largest bloated bureaucracies on the planet. No exception. Once you separate, well, guess what? You get to leave the bloat behind, right? So, call it the overhead to, the serving soldier on the front line, that ratio improves quite dramatically. So size-wise, what we're talking about is a military force that's between 25 and 28,000 people. And it gets there by virtue of the fact that you end up adhering closer to a NATO standard, because on separation, you're going to be part of NORAD, you're going to be part of NATO, you can't ignore those things. And the NATO standard suggests 2% plus of your GDP being spent on your military, which creates a budget of about $7 billion in 2020 dollars as we would currently sit. That makes a heck of a military, and currently, even in spite of not having tidewater access, we really don't need a Navy unless BC decides to come along with us. So it's focused on an Army and an Air Force, right? And a highly effective Army and Air Force that, what I call is proliferated with force multiplier assets, mainly guided munitions. We would be distributing, just as they do across Canada right now, especially in Quebec. A lot of people don't realize that probably 80 to 90% of all the military's capital budget is spent in Quebec. And now that gets spent here. So whether it's dealing with Saab to, start building planes here, there's an enormous opportunity for military industry to be built right here in Alberta, supporting our own troops and selling equipment abroad. So, the size of the force, 3 combat brigades, 1 of them being regular force, 2 being reserve. 3 regular fighter squadrons, 2 in Cold Lake, with a training squadron in Cold Lake, and say a squadron in Grand Prairie. Went to the effort to show, all right, where's the distribution of assets? And, there's a little bit of, call it Canadian socialism in all of us, where you have to protect those places that do not have that protection. Why do you think Ottawa was put where it was put? Didn't need the capital in Toronto, right? We'll have those same things here in Alberta. We have a lot of communities that were virtually destroyed, and they'll take a long time to come back. I can see no reason, for example, why Medicine Hat isn't the new Moose Jaw, where all Air Force training takes place. Things like that. We don't need those things in Calgary and Edmonton, per se, but there would be some of those assets. The force would be a little bit different split than it is today. Today, the current Canadian military is about 80-20 regular force to reserves. That would be flipped on its ear. You don't want to be spending a lot of money just having people around doing nothing when they're not training on a full-time basis. You can get the same amount of training days in a year and have them as part-time soldiers and part-time, airmen. So suffice to say is we spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, to get it to, what we see is a credible force, and, put some.
Everyone's asking, don't forget Wainwright and don't forget Suffield. Sorry, they're just start hitting with it.
The big training areas, Wainwright, Suffield, spent a lot of time, very little time in Suffield. I was an enemy force there once back in the 70s, but I spent a lot of time in, Shiloh, Dundurn, and Wainwright. And they become super bases, and the current, super bases we do have stay. But if you go to Edmonton is home of Western Canadian Brigade Group. One of the things that took place is Manitoba complained a lot, and 2nd Battalion Princess Baths, who I spent time with back in the 70s, could not leave Manitoba. They sold the base in Capion Barracks in Winnipeg and said, well, we're going to move you to Shiloh. Because that's the sort of welfare portion of how, the government goes after the military budget.
We got a question here. Should we trust the military we have now? What about the monarchy, and they swear allegiance to that right now? If we go republic, are you ready for that?
So I'm ex-military. There isn't many of us in there that would, pledge a true allegiance to the Queen. Like I was back in the day, Canada first. I raised my hand at a very young age to defend the country. It was the country I was aimed at defending, and I would say there was healthy animosities between us and, say, the British forces that might train over here. Suffield was primarily a British training base. Shiloh at the time was a German training base, because there's just no room for training areas in Europe, right? I honestly, those would be one of the few details, but not tough details that, traditions. What do you do with a lot of your traditions when you separate? Because traditions will change. Things will have to change, but you still have to build a strong esprit de corps. The world loves Canadian combatants, like it or not, and the best combatants in Canada are from here in the West. The Princess Patricia Canadian Light Infantry is primarily an Alberta regiment first. It was formed in Curry Barracks back in the day, and 1st Battalion Calgary, then 2nd Battalion Winnipeg, 3rd Victoria. They consolidated 1st and 3rd in Edmonton, and 2nd still stuck in Manitoba. My suggestion is the brigade get consolidated. The discussion of whether you carry a Queen's badge on your cap badge or a Queen's crown on your cap badge, that's a small discussion in a larger situation. 2 reserve brigades, that's a lot. So some form of conscription, but a conscription that takes into consideration a lot of needs of society. There are a lot of things that we have, for lack of a better word, lost the ability to do in our society. Because there's 2 things that I looked at myself as a combatant. We're also called upon to do things to help people that can't help themselves. And those are learned skills. And we stopped doing that. So call it the hand of an angel, but you also have the hand of an archangel. Yes.
I got quite a few veterans on my feed. I got lots of veteran friends, but I guess, yeah, a lot of military people. I've toured all the bases in Alberta myself. I did it when independence wasn't really popular at all, everybody. But I never had really any major struggles. I never had any access restrictions. And I was able to go through all the bases, talk to military, give presentations. I didn't really find, and I'm just asking you, as a veteran, I mean, I know you've become a major entrepreneur, but is it really an issue for independence, you think, for Western military personnel that you know of? Would there be a big resistance? If
Those that were not born here.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
I have a lot of friends that were in CW's one. You know, he started in Ontario and he came out to Alberta, and after understanding, you know, our Western beliefs, our Western cultures, you know, how you try to help people, not how you try to help yourself in their back pocket. It's hard to relate to folks down east. We don't like Justin. You go down east, they like him. Yeah. You know, the people in the capital markets in Toronto, most of the people I know love him. Yeah. We can't stand the ground he walks on, and I couldn't stand his father either. You know, and that's the differences between east and west. It's not, as we say, when Cliff and I come together, these are the foundation principles that we agreed on. No left or right. That's how they divide and conquer.
Yep.
You know, they create tribalism. Well, I'm sorry, there's only one damn tribe here, and it's the tribe of Alberta.
Perfect. It's
That's what we believe in. That's what will make it really, really easy, you know, to bring, I don't care whether it's police forces all on side, you know, they'll just badge over. You know, RCMP, go. 90% of the people who are RCMP members will stay, but they'll just be under a different badge. And when we say nobody gets left behind, you don't start screwing with their wages, you don't start screwing with their pensions, because if we're going to put that kind of capital into our economy, well, we're going to be 2035. We're going to be almost 8 million people. We need them.
Yeah.
We need all of our services to grow, not shrink. And right now, if we don't separate, they're all going to shrink, as Cliff pointed out. So, all we try to do is remove a lot of those narratives from the media, the politicians, whatever. Cliff's done a really good job. You know, we need borders, right? Borders is what creates our access to tidewater. Borders is what gives us our capability to do the things that we need to do, right? You know, the whole police thing, I don't know how many times I've heard the comments, how are we going to afford that? People do not understand that we pay at the rate of 1.5 to 1 3/4 times right now.
Who's Cliff?
CW. Right. That's Cliff. So, I mean, the whole Fairdale, Alberta thing, we had our people at every one of those functions watching what happened. And so everybody understands that. I'll clearly point that out. That Fairdale panel was bureaucrats, appointing bureaucrats, and then the whole process was sabotage by bureaucrats. Yeah. We can get into a lot more detail on that. But what you saw come out in the Fairdale report was no reflection as to what went on in there. None. Yeah. You know, and the people that got cheered, I was at the one in Calgary, you know, as the second speaker. I sat there and stared Preston straight in the eye, and I screamed at him for 2 minutes. Literally screamed. I got a standing ovation.
You're getting one right here, everybody. It's okay, keep going, sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, we just keep getting this gong show narrative, keep getting thrown at us, and we have to act for ourselves, as everybody's pointed out. There is no choice here. It's just timing from here on out. I have much stronger beliefs of how this is going to happen than others, and so I've been asked not to put those out, but I'm going to be that guy standing behind glass. When you see me walking around, somebody's already broke the glass. Right? Yeah. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Well done. Well received online too. Well done.
Okay, I got a question. Did you talk about the Air Force? Like how many jets we're gonna have? That's what gets me excited.
54.
Come over in the thing there. Stand in front of it. There you go.
The numbers are really basic. 54 aircraft broken down into 3 primary gun squadrons and 1 training squadron. So when I talk about gun squadrons, those are interceptors. So the aircraft would spend 90+% of their time configured as interceptors, and we would have another 54, and this is actually a new Canadian bird where I've looked forever for something like this. It's a larger version of an OV-10 Bronco. It's called an Icarius Wasp, and it's designed by people in Montreal. If they haven't built them yet, well, guess what? We're going to move them out here so they're built in the right province, right?
Right.
16 Hercs, split in 2 squadrons between Edmonton and Calgary. Comically, that's all Canada has right now, 16 Hercs. The combat transport helicopter would be the same thing that we're currently using in Canada as search and rescue, the H-101, right? That is the most credible, capable, efficient, reliable combat transport helicopter in the planet. A lot of countries use it. In England, they call it the 101 Merlins. Basically carry almost an entire platoon in one versus our Hueys that we run right now, which are underpowered. They're an embarrassment in any field of combat because they can't carry any kind of a load. They're more of just a reconnaissance thing to do armed escort, and that's about it. Not sure whether we need the Chinooks or not. So it would be a call it a patrol / escort helicopter. So you need something that can actually carry guided weapons, and the choice is actually I think it's called 969, but it's made by MD Helicopters.
I'll finish up here.
Can he hear me? Can you
Yeah, we talk loud though.
All right, I'll try and talk loud.
There it is.
Is it registering? Okay.
Yep.
We have a very similar situation happened in Europe a few years back that's in many ways parallel to what we're up against. I'm talking about Catalonia. So in Catalonia, 2 things happened that were, I don't think they really expected. Number one was they didn't expect the military to move in and take all their ballots, right? So when they had their final referendum on independence, a lot of the ballots were literally destroyed by the Spanish military moving in. You haven't really talked about that, and I think that's an important thing to talk about. And the second thing was is that they didn't get any international recognition right away. And so that was one of the reasons that the Spanish felt that they could simply declare the declaration as treasonous and go and arrest all the leaders.
Can I just, sorry Vince,
Yeah.
it's not that he's an Alberta military guy. He
Yeah, but
ran.
this is what I'm talking
He's
about.
raising points I can speak to.
You can't
Yeah.
speak to
Yeah.
just if because it's what I
But it
mean,
is
right?
not-
That's
what
not
I'm
his
talking about here is-
presentation.
Okay, Vince, let me respond
Yeah.
before you get too carried away.
Reiterate the question so that people can hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kind of wondering what the military will do when this starts happening, whether leaders in Ottawa can be able to turn the military on their people. The Canadian military that I know, that I trained in, won't do that. The Canadian military is the most respected military in the planet. Where it goes without interest. And that's a very important designation. Where you go with interest, that's what the U.S. does. The U.S. doesn't play anywhere that they don't have some kind of material interest in the place where we're going. Canadian military or Canadian citizens have been involved in every conflict in this planet, from and including the Boer War. Boer War, First World War, Second World War, Korea, any sort of number of little skirmishes anywhere in the world, either our military has been involved or our citizens have gone to fight. We had almost 10,000 Canadian citizens fought in Vietnam, right? And so on, and so on, and so on. We've been in Afghanistan for 16 years? We were engaged in Afghanistan, and you know something? We've never been attacked. Never. We're happy to die for people that can't help themselves, and we do so without interest.
Catalonia has been part of Spain for hundreds of years.
Spain has always been a conquest military. We're not a conquest military. We're always happy to step up and fight for people that can't help themselves. And it's a very loyal military. The military I know could not be ordered by any politician to move in any way, shape, or form against this population. What we are in right now, and I think a lot of people here recognize this, and this probably started somewhere during the Harper administration. As a population, we're probably in some form of a cold civil war with our bureaucrats.
I think it's really. I understand that you're military,
Yeah.
and you believe that the military will never move on its own people.
It's looking for its new boss. Like we're in a civil conflict,
But we've
right?
seen it actually play out that way just a few years ago in Catalonia, and they never.
I would actually, no offense, I wouldn't mind actually speaking on this, but
Go ahead.
because it's not, well, I don't want to do it there, but yeah. There's a few things I wanted to closely address. All of you spoke, but there's still maybe more speakers.
I think we're way over it now.
Well, you can speak if you want. Do you want to? Dennis? Okay, if you guys don't mind, I think we're going to, I'm going to slide over a little bit. Maybe I can talk to a lot of this. I've listened to all of you. I wanted a couple more speakers, but they've chosen not to speak. Just for everybody, I spent the last 4.5 months on an international forum. I've been out with all the greatest academics. It's been a truly great experience for me, where I got to ask literally the best of the best, literally every couple days or once a week, in some pretty impressive forums, like 12 of us, and you guys wouldn't even believe who I sat with just 2 weeks ago. It's like major media right now, and I'm going to answer your question on Catalonia, and I want you guys to all pay attention to this. 1948 was a pivotal change in the world. We watched a shift of global powers. International laws absolutely changed. If you guys want to write this down, and you know what? I have the best experts in the world that will take this on, because they're learning too. There are 5 countries that run this world right now. It's not some elite globalist like there is. There are groups and UN states that are trying to go against that. We had 5 allies in World War II. This is reality. And the Catalonia, Spain, Axis power. You look right, you know this. And there's a lot of countries that will absolutely never get any kind of seat in this world, no matter what. Germany, same thing. They all get upset. These globalist agendas we all hear about, everybody, and this is factual. It is countries that want to use the UN General Assembly, come forward. Canada happens to be in it too. As sad as that is, as bad as that is, this is what's happening. They want to upset the balance of the military might of countries that were established, 5 of them. They hold all the nuclear weapons, almost all of them. They made a rule in 57 to stop international law. Nobody else can make nuclear weapons. India snuck through, and one more country snuck through. But
Pakistan.
Pakistan.
Thanks to Canada, by the way.
Yeah, right. Israel snuck in. But Pakistan is India. So those 2 countries, right after Britain settled out, but Britain, France, UK, Russia, and China. Those are the allies. They have absolute authority over all international law. This is reality. There's all kinds of terms lawyers like to use, comparative law of other states, but the absolute laws we're faced with since 1948 is the international law of those binding 5. They make the rules, they've set it. Every nation in this world that's registered in the UN has to abide by their rules ratified by all 5. Now they are in a fight right now. China, right? They play games with each other, and they use other countries' little pawns in their thing. But we don't get to set things like unilateral declarations of independence. Look at the whole history since 1948. You go unilateral declaration, you elect a government. They don't hold a referendum. Like Catalonia did not reach out to the UN Security Council. They said, you know what? We don't have to. We're going to do it our way. We don't have to listen to anybody.
Right.
And guess what happens to you? Your country goes down the toilet. One of the most radical countries, and the most recent, was Sudan. I don't know how many of you know about Sudan. In Africa, very, very war-torn, high conflict, high genocides, human rights violations. And they went to the UNSC, the 5 binding members. Canada even helped in that. And they administered that vote, that referendum. And they did that right across the world. No matter where all the refugees were, if you're Sudanese, you go talk to the Sudanese community. I did. Todd Wainwright here did. And you know what? You'll find out they all voted in 2005. The refugees here in Canada who are now citizens, they all got to vote for the independence of Sudan, and then you have a break, and they separated. Now you have South Sudan. No issue. Nobody regulates. They have problems because of more human rights violations. But you'll find if you use the UNSC, if you at least let them know what you're doing, you can get that done. And you can get it done without any hard conflicts if you utilize that. I'm not saying we say no to the Clarity Act. There are points of the Clarity Act that do breach international law, and Canada is going to have a big trouble there. They're right about First Nations. We're bound to that. We would have to settle First Nations. But other than that, we can get this done. Yes, go ahead, Vince.
Well, I 100% agree. The only thing is, when I was looking at CW's steps, he put towards the end, international recognition. And I think that the way to go is to do a precautionary. You should have that higher up on your step level. So before you have any sort of talk of referendum.
I've been at it for a very long time. I'm even meeting globalists, by the way, like even Danny, just like globalist organizations, farming. I was going through this with Maryland, and that's for everybody. There's 4 organizations right now that want to come in here with farming, and I'm meeting them right now too, doing international forums, and that's like the WTO and other organizations. I'm not saying they're bad, but they have an agenda too. There's big groups. Traditionally, UFA and for Albertans, I know that was a big deal. Now they're moving into that too. And there's things we have to address. How much are we going to let Canada give away on the world stage, which is everybody's civil rights? That's your property rights, how you move forward. Who was it that talked about Cuba? You did, right?
Yeah.
For Cuba, we could go through that. JFK went into Cuba, I believe it was 1962, the Bay of Pigs. Does everybody remember that? Yeah. And, to look at that, I look at Cuba a little bit different way, and I think the world does too when you talk on an international forum, this left and right. Cuba had a globalist invasion, pretty much by the United States of America at the time. It was a whole bunch of American companies that owned all the industry, the sugar, the plantations, and the people worked just as if it was colonial, almost, okay? And they rose up, that's where you get your Castro. They invaded because those companies that owned the entire industry, can you imagine just Alberta, right, if we let any world power, whether it's American or China, and they're trying right now, can you imagine we let a foreign power take all of our businesses? Because that is ultimately the globalist agenda. We're not picking on different businesses, it's just a function of that system. If you leave it unrestricted, that's what will happen to you. And that led to Fidel Castro. Then JFK went in there, a leftist, really. He went in there, he's going to spank him. He got spanked. And then what happened to him? Almost 1,000 troops captured, I think 114 deaths. They got caught, they were released, they made a deal, but that led to Russia getting involved, another UNSC. You will find that there is absolutely no rule because of veto of those 5 countries, that's China, Russia, UK, France, and USA, that they can't do. They can almost do anything except for break the balance of each other. They'll never give up that power. They'll take certain sanctions, but they can veto international laws by saying, I will remove my say. And then they can turn around and impose their will on people if they didn't sign something that everybody else does. And this is that General Assembly that takes from us. That's what they do. Canada, Ottawa, this Laurentian, they've been doing it for a very long time. Making deals, it spans conservative, liberal, NDP. It's been going on for quite some time. And Alberta is just a really easy region, highly unrepresented, nothing like the United States. We're highly underrepresented for our population. We've always been taken from. And there's no world restrictions, really, everybody. They can do anything for a region, territory, province of a UN member state. If you separate, you can gain that status too. And then all those international laws, you appease those 5, you play their rules, which they actually have pretty good rules if you really look at what's... Uh-oh. Should be. Well, anyways, I guess it's hello. Came on. I guess it had to come around.
Karaoke mode.
Where was it? Binding laws. Yeah. So they have that binding law power, and if we follow that, when you look at what international laws are what, it works great for a nation. You just have to take that plunge and do it. As long as you stay under the thumb, you're always going to just be a region, territory, state. There's all kinds of titles, but that's reality. You have no say in this world. So thanks everybody. Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
I'd just like to thank Mike for coming up and talking about the military. Thank you very much. It's awesome. Proud patriot, awesome guy. We'll just wrap this up by saying one couple things, which is that it's time to say no to the politics of government. It's time to say yes to every Albertans. Everyday Albertans. Seniors, young people, business owners, municipalities, public sector, union sector. It's all about everyday Albertans. We need to get those 500,000 Albertans back to work as quickly as possible. And the best way to do it is to focus on one thing, laser focus. April 2023, a united majority independence government for everyday Albertans. No left or right, no special interests, everybody wins, and no one is left behind. Thank you.
Well said, CW. Rosie, thank you all the guests. Everybody really rolled out something special here. I hope we all learn from each other and we take that forward, because we do have to unite. There's nothing wrong with taking the Alberta 51st state. The focus of the Republic as a nation that has to go forward. And I hope people really look at the hard separation here, because it's staying in Confederation will never limit the powers that country can impose on you. And there's nothing in this world or any nation that's going to support any region of a UN state. As long as we're in that, we're never going to get it changed. Our Constitution, many have tried, like a lot of you said, for more than 100 years with zero success. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope that was awesome for you at home. Thanks to all the presenters. Very special indeed. You guys did it all, huh? Thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to finish up. It's snack time. I hope you all learned a lot. Bye now.